Okay, ready? I'll now call to order the special meeting of May 14th, 2018. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can you just please still stand for a moment? As some of you might know, we just got word that we have thankfully put a little bit of closure to a family here in Auburn, and I'd like to take a moment of silence for Valerio McFarland. Thank you. Okay, first thing on the agenda tonight is order number 45-05-142-018, accept and place on file the city audit for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Fournier and a second from Councilor Walker. I'm going to open this up for public comment. Any members of the public who would like to speak on this issue are more than welcome. Nobody from the public. I'm going to bring it back to the council for discussion. But first of all, I'm going to start off with City Manager Creighton, if he would like to comment on the audit for any reason.
I'm happy to, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, audience. This audit is an audit that the Audit Review Committee has heard from the auditor. This does not have to do with the anything to do with the assessing error that you probably read about and heard about. That's on the budget that we're in now, so the audit has nothing to do with that particular issue, and I recommend that the council accept the audit.
Any members of the council have any comment on this topic before I bring it to a vote? None being? I'd like to bring this to a vote. By a show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? None being? The motion carries 7-0. Next on the agenda for tonight is order number 46-05-142-018. It's the adoption of the fiscal year 2019 Auburn school budget. I will entertain a motion at this time.
I move we accept the budget as presented.
I have a motion from Councilor Fournier. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilor Walker. At this point, I'm going to open it up to the public for any comment. Any members of the public who wish to speak on the budget for fiscal year 2019, please come forth. State your name, address, and so forth.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for the work that you do. I know it's been a stressful time since you discovered the shortfall. And I want to thank the school committee for also making efforts to address that as well. I came before you folks approximately 2 months ago with regard to PBL and the state of affairs within our public school system. I have been busy since then, and one of the things that I have done just within the last week is to review the budgets going back from 2008 through to present. And part of the reason I did that was to try to determine how much we are investing. Mr. Kendall handed out tonight a memo, and within it I noted that he had put the proposed budgets were built upon 4 filters, and one of those filters is considering evidence of return on investment. And I think this is very important, and this is not the first time that has been referenced. It was referenced last year. For me, the budget issue is not just about whether or not there's going to be a rise in taxes. It's about how we're spending the money that the schools actually receive. And it's to that end that I've been trying to determine how much money has gone into PBL. And so in reviewing the budgets, I know Scott Thistle came last week and spoke to you folks about the costs associated with experts. And I think they are just probably under $500,000. And I also clarified with the school administration that those figures do not include conferences that have been attended and any costs associated with that. And there are also some experts that are not included in those figures yet just because they have not been paid out. Mr. Stephen David, or David Stephen, excuse me. But what I would like to talk about is the trends that I found in reviewing the budgets and the significance of them. What I found is that our technology budget has nearly doubled. And that is within just the last, well, again, I started looking at the budgets from 2008 on. That budget that I'm referring to having doubled has to do with technology, hardware, and software and maintenance. It does not have to do with the payroll. The payroll regarding that, I honestly don't know how many positions we've added because the payroll wasn't detailed until this year in terms of the technology department. The other area in which we have seen a big jump in expenses is the curriculum area. 2008 to 2009, the actual amount spent was $140,596. We are currently looking at $280,573. That's again doubling the monies. Why are these numbers doubling? It's in part due to PBL. How much is hard to say, but based on my review, I would say that most of those figures. So my estimate, and I encourage the school department to come forward and challenge my assumption, that we basically, particularly from 2013 going forward, are spending about $500,000 on PBL, with the increases in curriculum and the increases in technology. Now, in light of how big the budget is, that doesn't sound like a lot for reform. However, I would suggest that those monies being spent on that, in light of the fact that the school budget has not grown a whole lot in the last 10 years, means that monies that have been spent elsewhere in the past are now being spent here. And I am concerned about that. I'm concerned about that because I was told there used to be 5 guidance counselors at EL. There are now 4. I asked the administration if it was in fact true that back when one of the guidance counselors left, those monies were then used to create a new position for multiple pathways, again pursuing the PBL agenda. The response I got, and I think most of you, I've been copying you on my communications, was that the multiple pathways director was a new position. But I never got an answer to where the funding for that new position came from and whether it was in fact funds from the guidance counselors. I've been told there used to be 6 foreign language teachers at EL, and now there are 5. And I know you guys are familiar with the testimony of some of the teachers who have said that schools of the size of EL should have more teachers for foreign language. When I went around town getting the petition signed to have our public forum, I heard about the limited options available for courses in the science curriculum at EL, and that they're spread pretty thin with regard to the teachers. So again, one of the things I think that's important to consider as we look at the budget for the school committee is, where are we investing our monies? Which gets to the next question, which Mr. Kendall put before us, and I appreciate that. We need to be considering the evidence of return on the investment. And I have been trying to get that information, and it has not been forthcoming. And now the suggestion is that it needs to be compiled and that I will have to pay for the time. I've already paid $225 to get an accounting of the experts, and some correspondence, etc. I really don't think a taxpayer should have to be paying to get this information. When I say information about whether or not we're seeing improvements, what I mean is we've been doing this since 2011. Just because it's now on radar because of the grading change doesn't mean it hasn't been implemented earlier. So there should be evidence about whether or not we are seeing improvements in our proficiencies. And if we're not, then why are we putting all this money into it? Why aren't we adding classroom teachers, instead of talking about adding instructional coaches? So I also would like you all to look at the information that the school committee did provide on their website, and you will see that between the fall and winter testing at AMS, the proficiency in math actually dropped, and the proficiency in reading was stagnant. Now, one of the reasons I really want us to pause and look and try to find this information, which is what I originally went to the school committee for back 2 months ago. I simply said, there are problems all over the state with this, they're re-examining it, let's stop and assess and go from there. It hasn't turned out that way. But one of the reasons I think it's important for us to get this information is because I have here, and I'll forward it all to you later, a list of the schools that have been doing proficiency-based learning for some time. And a lot of the proficiencies are actually dropping, not improving. Among those are Poland, Massabesic, Halldale, Casco Bay. These are schools that have been doing it for longer than we have, and they're not seeing results. So I would ask you as the City Council to weigh this in whether or not you accept this budget. Whether you accept this budget before you have more information about how we're spending the money that we are willing to give to the schools, provided that it's going, you know, what's the bang for our buck? That's what I would like to know. Are we actually seeing improvements, or do we maybe need to change course and focus our energies and our monies on not just one thing, but a few things that might actually result in some improvements? Like I said, it's the technology and the curriculum. There's also been an increase in membership and dues. We're now part of the Maine cohort for customized learning. We have been for a while. We pay anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 a year to be part of that. Again, there's also a lot of little hidden costs in the budget. Like I just got done looking at the curriculum summary. I think it was for 2016 and 17, and there's a bunch of costs for substitutes because of mass customized learning training. I'm reminded of something my father used to say to me as a kid: penny rich, pound poor. And I'm a little bit worried that right now, with our focus on PBL, without taking a look at the results, that we're spending money in a lot of places, big chunks and little chunks that add up, and we're not getting a return on that investment. Whether you pass the budget or not, as a taxpayer, I would respectfully request that you ask our school department to please provide the information showing that we are on the right path. I'm an attorney, and I know how to do discovery. I know how to request the documents, and I know the game that is involved in only providing what was literally requested, etc. Unfortunately, in an attempt to have this discourse, that is what we are involved in, is this back and forth. I don't have the energy nor the time for it, nor do I think I should have to do it. This is not, should not be an antagonistic situation. We should all be on the same side, trying to do what is in the best interest of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any other members of the public that would like to speak at this point? No members of the public? Then I'm going to bring it back to the council for discussion. Any thoughts, comments from the council on the school budget? Start off to the right. Councilor Young?
Nothing at this time.
Tanya?
One of my questions is with removing some of the funding for personnel and activities that supposedly support PBL, does this change what happens next year and the year after and the year after in terms of supporting it?
I think at this point, we'd probably need Chairman Kendall or Superintendent Grondin and or both to address this.
Have you seen it, Sue?
I'm glad that Ms. Garcia ended with a statement that she hopes we're doing the best for students. That certainly is what we are doing. And our belief and our intent is always in the best interest of students of the city of Auburn. We are diligent in our pursuit of that. We take our responsibility to educate our children extremely seriously, do the very best we can with the funds provided by this city, and continue to do so. So the budget that has been presented at this time is our attempt to address the two issues that are before us. One, the needs of the city for its education of the students, and the needs of the city for the shortfall that was discovered. We have adjusted our budget and addressed that need to the extent that we are capable of doing that without severely injuring the educational component of this city. I don't know if the council or if the public needs me to read this statement, but perhaps that should be on the record since we're on TV.
Yeah, we'll put it in the record for posting.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Kendall, if you'd like to maybe hit some of the high points, I think without reading everything verbatim, I think that would be probably helpful for people following along.
Very good. We're trying to address some of the needs, as Ms. Garcia indicated, getting more classroom teachers into the schools where they're needed. We have teacher positions that exist now that we are continuing, that were federally funded, that those funds are falling short, so they would not fund those positions. If we did not move those into the school budget, we would have to eliminate those positions. We are moving those into the school budgets to retain them, again, to address class size and the needs that are there. The issue of the 4 buses, we are in a fortunate position where we brought the transportation back in-house, and the state has a provision that they will fund an additional bus. Because of that transfer coming back in, they recognize that often there's an additional need to support that fleet. So we have the opportunity for the state to fund 4 buses in this next budget. In that scenario, when you buy buses, the state reimburses you the following year. So we will see those funds expended in this budget. You'll see that in the budget line, but we will see revenue from the state that offsets those in the next annual budget. We are doing the best we can to reduce our dependence on fund balance. For those that need an explanation of what a fund balance is, that is the difference between what we budget and what we actually expend. So if we are fortunate enough not to over-expend but under-expend our total budget at the end of the fiscal year, the remaining funds end up in an undesignated fund balance, and those are the monies that we're able to carry and show as an undesignated fund balance. We have been using that fund balance, dependent on it, in order to support our current curriculum and staffing to the tune of about $900,000, a little more than that, for the last 3-4 years. We are trying to reduce that dependency, become I don't think it's necessary to say more fiscally responsible, but a tighter management of the budgeting process, so we are going to be closer to the actual expenditures. And as you get closer to it and you do not have that carryover year to year for your fund balance, and yet you're dependent on it, we would have to ask the taxpayer for additional funds in order to cover the existing programs. We are trying to reduce that in a responsible manner, carry the programs as they exist, but reduce our dependency on that fund balance. The budget we have proposed is a fiscally responsible one, responsive to the needs of the city, and we are looking for approval.
Thank you very much. Mr. Poisson, do you have anything to add to that, or?
Pretty much covered, yeah.
Very good. I'm going to bring it back. Councilor Lozon, you had a specific question, I think.
I did, and I
Oh, we have
really,
members here?
I do appreciate the work that you've done to be able to create the budget that you have. My specific question was, and it can be very general, the answer, what was taken away to be able to do this, and was it specifically support for PBL, or was it?
No, it's not specifically support for PBL, which is, that's a difficult term to define for one. But we lost some guidance positions that we would have had. I'm trying to think the other things that were dropped, particularly from
Instructional coach.
the interventionists, instructional coach. And it was the additional guidance positions taken away. So what we're doing is a curriculum-based, trying to provide a program of instruction throughout the district, and it's kind of a misnomer. We've never used that term, proficiency-based learning. It's kind of gotten melded in with the proficiency-based diploma requirement that the state has upon us. But our goal is to teach our children, and to arrive at that proficiency-based definition of, to provide them a diploma, they have to be able to demonstrate their knowledge and do it in a way that teachers and the school, we as a school department, can testify that, yes, they have met those proficiencies. So that is the current curriculum direction. There is nothing that we are doing that I could say is you know, PBL, which is a term that I find hard to define, that we would not be doing in the best interest of students at this time, regardless.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Hayes?
No questions at this time.
Councilor Titus?
Well, no, I don't know if I have questions as much as I have, you know, there's been a lot of publicity going on with this, obviously. But my concern is reaction to that criticism and direct answers to questions that I've seen flying through emails and from students and parents. And I guess we have a new task force that's starting their work today or tomorrow? Tomorrow. And I don't know, but what I want to make sure as a counselor that I see the results of that task force. And then also, if you have I've had student letters before that have had very serious concerns about how they're being graded and whether they really get a good feedback on how they're doing or what they're capable of doing. And when we get questions like that, is the school committee addressing those directly, saying, well, no, you're wrong, it's something else, or you're right, we're going to fix it? I don't hear any of that, and I'd like to see more of that.
I think we are where we are today because of some very deliberate decisions made over the last 7 years. Those are considered decisions. They were directions taken over that period of time. We have heard objections to where we are today over the last 2 months, requesting a change, a knee-jerk reaction, an immediate change to something in the past, at least my interpretation, this is no one said this, my interpretation, to something in the past that had not worked, in our estimation, was not a successful implementation of education, and certainly wasn't going to address the needs of a proficiency-based diploma. So we were preparing for that, and we made specific changes. We were changing this system to try and address those needs and to better educate our students. To have a knee-jerk reaction to a complaint, not a complaint. I'll say there have been, maybe a dozen or so people that have come forward. Some students have provided letters. There are other students and there are other parents and there are other teachers that have come in support of what's going on. So that's, as with everything, you have positives, you have negatives, you have differences of opinion, and somewhere in there is the direction that you take. Currently, we are on the path that we are on. Are we reevaluating as we reevaluate all the time? Yes, we are. We always do that. We are welcoming the, call it criticism, that comes from students, that comes from parents, comes from teachers. We are not blind to that. We are not, not hearing it. We are listening to it. We are responding to it in what we consider a responsible manner. We will not shift without deliberation and proper consideration of what does that mean, where will it take us, and what direction does that take us. We've put 7 years into this. We've put a considerable amount of money, yes. I mean, there's no question when you need to invest in education in the direction you're taking. We need some expertise. We need some information. We need help in designing that. We need help in bringing us forward and making us a better system. So to suggest that we should respond and change back to something that, in our opinion, was not working because we have heard a dozen or so complaints, would not be responsible on part of the school committee. We are taking the responsible path. We are responding to it. We are considering those criticisms. We are looking what needs to happen or change if it needs change, and address those in a responsible manner. We're not blind, dumb. We live in this community. We're interested in what's best for our students and in best for the city.
I mean, I've talked with people from SAD 17 to York County, everywhere, and everybody's grasping at the same problem, who have ever gone down the path of PBL as a direction to take care of proficiency-based diplomas.
Oh.
And the only thing that I've seen that I thought was a very good move by some is to delay the grading system. Or change
That seems to be the biggest
because understanding, if you're a
objection.
student, and I know as a parent bringing up children, if I didn't understand how my child was doing, it's extremely frustrating. And when you're a middle schooler, 1 year is a lifetime when something gets missed or not. And so to go a year and not understand what's going on, to me, is extremely frustrating, and would be for any parent. So
we've heard that. We've
I'm
definitely
thinking
heard
that the system might fix itself over time, but if the students and parents aren't getting the communication feedback, which is the grading system, then they're just in the dark, and they're flying on faith. And that really makes me nervous, that we have to fly on faith.
We have heard that, and I mean, they saw it, and we were getting feedback. It was coming end of February, 1st of March, when they first saw that presentation. And so we have been getting feedback since then. And other schools have been getting feedback as well. Change is difficult? Absolutely. Was it explained well? Does it need better explanation? Absolutely. Will we stay with that? I'm not going to promise one way or the other. We're going to study it, look at it, and do what's best for students.
Now, would it be, but one more question, Mayor, but would it be irresponsible to ask that if we pass this budget, we pass it on the contingency that we have all that information relating to PBL that you can come up with? Any kind of expenses or whatever you can come up. One of the things I did with EMS was I asked them, please, come up with the expenses relating to that so that we can look at it and really assess what it is. Is it possible to get that information?
I can answer.
I'm going to respond to that just for a minute,
And I
though.
can answer as well.
Yeah. PBL is not a definition that defines what we're doing. So how we would respond to that would be difficult.
Well, let's talk about money that you are going towards a proficiency-based diploma.
Diploma.
So
Now,
if you go into that, the goal is that, so you
Right.
have monies that you spend towards a goal.
That we could address
Is it possible to
very
find out what, any expenditures for the last just 5 years or 3 years would be enough to see what part of our overall budget is going to this new process that everybody can see?
Address the state requirement for proficiency.
Well, and that's what it is, but we still would like to know what that is. If we didn't, because it looks like the state's going to throw that out anyway. I mean, they're almost heading that
It's
way.
an option.
So specific costs in this budget are the cost of the Empower platform, which is where the grades are being housed, and the cost for the membership to MCCL. Those are the specific costs.
And the coaches.
No, because what people are forgetting is we have another law that people aren't talking about, which is the teacher evaluation. All of our teachers must be evaluated and determine effective or not effective. And part of that law requires teachers showing growth and having support. So our instructional coaches help support teachers in their teacher evaluation system.
They would be there regardless if we were going
Correct.
different, whatever path we were going,
'Cause
and
we
you've decided
And I
those
explained,
two.
yes, I explained this at the last school committee meeting. We had positions like this 15, 20 years ago. They were called consulting teachers. There was consulting teacher for English, math, science, so forth. The OLT office used to have 8 people in it. It now has 2. So those positions have evolved as education evolves. We reduced a half of an instructional coach position in this budget. So we went down a half because the other half of one of our coaches will be serving as the GT coordinator. So we did look at that. But to say that instructional coaches are important, they've been important since in order to support teachers. So to say that that's PBL costs, I would argue differently. The other thing about our student data, every year we do, at the end of the school year, we do presentations on our data. Sue Doris, our Title I coordinator, does our data. So I'm putting that together for Mrs. Garcia, pulling out those presentations and getting that data together. So no one has never talked about our student data. We do, on an annual basis, look at our student data and our growth data. And we check and adjust our processes. But those specific costs to PBL, like when we used to work with Reinventing School Coalition, those costs are not in the budget. Those were costs at the beginning, and those costs have decreased. Now, curriculum work is important no matter what system you're doing. Curriculum work is important to make sure that our curriculum is consistent pre-K to 12. So that is ongoing work. That's not PBL, that's important curriculum work. It's important for teachers to know what they're teaching, how that progresses grade to grade, how are we assessing, common assessment, so, sorry, my mouth was dry. So that's ongoing work. So that's to answer your question.
So it would that would be, so we wouldn't want to pass a budget with, asking for that information.
Let's point taken.
Okay.
Let's footnote this. Let's see what other
Well,
questions people
one
have.
other point, too, is I want to make before I move on, and that is that, we don't have direct control over how the money is being spent. So we really can't, obviously, tell you what you need to do, how you need to do it, except I think enough information now is given to you. The public may make that decision when they vote in June. So I don't think we can make decisions to pass a budget, yes or no, because of the policies of the school committee necessarily. But the spending, that could be something we could use in the budget because we don't like how much is being spent. So,
I'm going to pass it down to the council. Just one quick question, Superintendent Groden, while you're here, is track Everett Little. We can't find it within the CIP nor operational budget on a resurfacing of that track. We just wanted to make sure that that was happening and that's already accounted for in the budget.
Yeah, it is happening.
And where would we find that within your budget? Does it seem in the line item on expenditure?
From last
Yeah,
year,
CIP.
CIP last year.
CIP.
Last year's CIP.
Last year's CIP.
Last year, okay, so it wouldn't be in this, in last year's CIP. When is that scheduled to, that work to commence?
That's supposed, right, in June.
June,
Yes.
after school, and then finished up early August.
June, early August? Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to pass on and to Councilor Fournier. Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, a few. Number one, I want to thank the school committee on the vote that we took for a 0% increase. It's helping us move forward together as a team, and personally, I truly appreciate it, and I know we all do too. And embedded within that, you had the 5 positions that were the teacher positions, which I'm all for, because it reduces class sizes. The things that were omitted were, the coach, the instructional coach, to half-time guidance counselors, and it's 2 interventionists, I believe. So you can look at that 2 ways. You can look at it as something that supports PBL, or you can look at it as something that supports the classroom. So as I think about that, I was thinking about over time, when a school district decides to go to a specific curriculum, if there are monies there for that, there are certain things one must do as a community, as a school committee, and as a school district to follow the rigors of that particular grant. So if you have the grant monies coming in and you're directed to do certain things with that, part of that has to do with monies directed toward the training, directed toward staff that gets hired, directed toward specific materials, electronics. Those types of things are all wrapped up in part of that, and that's why we being the school committee and our students, receive that money with these, stipulations. Because if you don't do that, then you're not going to receive that money. But I also know from my experience too, that on the other hand, if and when you run out of that money, what happens is that those taxes are taken up by the public, taken up by the local taxpayers, unless something else takes its place. So I'm just saying that to kind of like coat this conversation so that we understand how this process works. I know that over time we've had some positions. I have no problem with, experts in the field that can help classroom teachers. I, number one, want classroom sizes to be low enough so that we can keep the power within the classroom teacher so that that teacher can do what he or she can do with a smaller size. Students today are pretty complicated. Life is complicated today. It's not what it was, I know, when I was starting out. So we do need the sizes to be lower. Students need that contact with their teachers. They need them as leaders, they need them as mentors, and they need them for bouncing off ideas. They need them as their teacher. And so I contact instruction, guided instruction, differentiated instruction, all of that. That's really, really important. So the more a teacher is in control of that, the better outcome. I look forward to, and I'm still hearing a lot of comments from constituents, from parents, and I'm getting a lot from students. And God bless them, the students are so intelligent, and they can just put it in so succinctly as to what they're going through. So I consider them for sure a stakeholder group. And that's one group that I know we haven't included in the task force, but I know that you guys will have a plan for getting that input in, because they have some really eye-opening comments. And I think if we look at that, students help us teach. They help us get better at what we're doing. And if we listen, I think we're going to have a good product by the time we're done. I really, really look forward to the task force meeting, wee hours of the morning tomorrow, and I really appreciate it because I can't fit any more nights in. But I really look forward to that because a lot has happened. We have had a lot of feedback. We have heard from a lot of people, and we know where everyone is coming from. And we still need to continue to encourage more comments so that we can have enough material to start a really good course of action. And it may be that when we start looking at where we're headed, we might decide that there are some things that we want to keep, some things that we don't want to keep for sure, and some things that can be tweaked. And with that, when we talk about some of the counselors making comments about, hiring extra positions, well, if we find that the positions that we need are not an instructional coach or not an interventionist, but perhaps more classroom teachers, that might be one of the things. But I think that when you look at your consultants in the fields of the subject areas, to me, that is the golden nugget. The ones for literacy, the ones for math, specifically math. If we're going to keep up with this world, we do need to have those specifics, those specialists in those areas. So I'm looking, we have a lot of territory to cover, and I think we have a lot of good people, a nice collection of people, and I commend you and whoever put, and Shelley and whoever was a part of getting this group together. It's a very eclectic group of people, and all the stakeholders are represented. The only ones I would say is the students. We have to find a way to link them in. We can't let them out of school, but maybe they can come and
They have a survey.
they have a survey. Woohoo, good, very good. And I can't wait to see what they have to say. One of the things that you mentioned, Superintendent, is the Empower, and that's something that's part of where the money is from this budget. Again, we can't tell you where to put the money, but if we're hearing a lot of information about Empower and how much people would prefer seeing us go back to Power School, then we need to take a look at that. We need to grapple with that and say, okay, if it's causing a lot of, dissonation, and I think we need to take a look at it and say, is it really giving us the bang for the buck? And if not, then maybe we need to change that. And the other thing is data. The last thing I wanted to say is I'm glad to hear that the data is being put together, because everyone wants to see the data. And if we see what the actual situation looks like, what our accomplishments are, where are our high points, where are our low points, where can we improve, and the data is going to drive what we do. So that's the most powerful piece. So if we can review that and have chances to comment on that, and then that will help inform our decision-making. So I look at it as a real positive road that we're following now, and it's new territory, and I'm really excited for all of us that we're going there, and thank you very much for that.
Councilor Walker?
Thank you. Just a couple comments. I want to thank you for at least bringing this budget in where I thought was more reasonable to start with. But I want to talk about the knee-jerking that's been going on in the last couple, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. I'm glad that we had all these young kids, children, and some of the adults that have come out and spoken up and said their piece, and I'm glad it woke up the knees and people heard what they have to say. Because I think it was time. People were sitting back. I don't know if they were afraid of you, like people keep saying they were afraid of this council, that's why they don't come forward.
Just you.
Whatever their reasons are, I don't really know, but I'm glad that we had a lot of people that have come out in the last few months. And I heard this 2 years ago from people saying, we aren't happy with where we're going with this. I'm not an educator, and I don't want to be one personally. I'll leave that all up to you people, and you take the abuse, and we'll disagree or agree. So thank you very much.
I don't think anybody is scared of the rest of us, Councilor Walker, for the record. Please put those in the minutes. Councilor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to thank the school committee for their hard work to come in with this final number. I'm thankful for the parents and the teachers that have come, and the parents that stuck up for their kids and what they believe is right and how they would like to see their children educated. I'm even thankful for a couple of constituent letters that told me basically to cut the bull and to basically quit wrecking the school department, and that basically the education that the kids need. I believe that we need to teach the kids the best that we can, and I know Auburn has a lot of very fine teachers that work their hearts out for their kids on a daily basis. They put everything they have on a daily basis in the classroom with their kids. And in between that, they have to keep up with all the requirements of this PBL stuff. A lot of teachers that have talked with me said that they would not like to keep going the way we're going with the PBL, because the more they try to keep up with what they got to do with requirements, the less they have with the individual time they can give to the kids that are falling behind. Students that can learn at a faster rate, it may work and it's great. Those that can learn faster, they can turn around and help those that need the help. There's more to trying to get and education on the fast track. Sometimes you got to slow down in order to absorb the stuff that you're being taught and for it to sink in. Because if I wanted to speed read a book, yes, I could get the plot of the story and the gist of everything going on, but in a year I may not remember everything. So sometimes it's better to slow down to and absorb this stuff. If what the way in the curriculum, the PBL or whatever we're calling it is working, then why is our test score so low? We need to do something more in order to bring up our test scores of all subjects. Our kids are our future. They deserve more than what we have. And all the money that we have in the city's budget won't do that if we're going along the way we're doing now, I feel. I take my responsibility as a counselor serious. And like I said in the beginning, I have to judiciously balance out what I give the city as well as the staff, the school department. Yes, I have a pet project, my senior center, but there's more to it than the senior center and what that senior center can do for the community and learning and the whole 9 yards. For this time being, I'm going to support this budget. I will give you, the school committee, a year to work out the kinks and to listen to the parents. And I'll give you a year. I'm putting you guys, all you guys, and myself included, on record. I want what's best for our children and our future. I want time for us all to get, if the school committee, that's our adversary of the counselors, can come together on this issue, then maybe we should use this as a learning curve to bring the parents, the school committee, and us counselors together to work together as a whole and craft the education system and do our part, whatever we need to do in order to give that education to the kids. And yeah, I'm going to get up on the soapbox now. I'm angry. I'm defiant. I want what's best for our kids. I want our kids that have come here to know that we are listening to him. Or at least I have listened to him. Few of the counselors listen to him. I'm hoping the school board is listening to the kids and even the parents that come out, because they only want what's best for them and for their peers. And I won't go any further because I think the mayor is going to start doing what I said I was going to do to the former mayor's suit coat when he got wound up. Pull me at the suit coat to pull me off.
I left that in my office. I don't have one of those shepherd's crooks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gary. Thank you, all the councilors, for your comments. City Manager Creighton, did you have anything to comment about on the budget right now?
I'm not going to comment on the PBL or policies that the school department may have or not have. I just want to express my gratitude to the superintendent, to the business manager, and the work that you've done with the finance director and I, and leading to the meeting that was held where the school committee voted to help the city out with this financial problem that we're facing now as a result of the assessing error. I appreciate that. I think there are a lot of positive things going on in terms of the cooperation between the city manager's office and superintendent's office, and I do appreciate that. I see positive things happening in the future. I know that there is going to be a report made to the council and to the school committee on some joint cooperation ideas that I've been talking to the superintendent about. We're going to have a meeting in the near future to talk about that. So thank you for that support.
Okay. I have just a couple comments. I thank the council. I want to first of all thank the second, maybe first, I'll thank you all last. But thank the superintendent, the school committee, Chairman Kendall, for all the work you did, especially in the last minute scramble here. It's important. It's really important, obviously, that we balance out what our individual department needs are and what the taxpayers can frankly afford. An extra $30 or $40 a year sometimes can be too much for too great a majority of folks. And we listen to those people. And I just want to clarify and a couple things here. There has been dozens and dozens of emails and phone calls that I've received over the past, well, since I took office, concerning proficiency-based learning, mass customized learning, whatever initiative name is applied, and I can't, frankly, keep track of that. I will say, though, just to help with your decision-making process and your going forward, relaying what I'm hearing from constituents, this is not just a one-off type event. This is something that's been stemming from 2010, 2011 in multiple different contexts, an evolution, if you would, from it was iPads and mass customized learning and integration of something, and frankly, I can't keep track. On a personal note, I did have to pull my daughter out of Everett Little High School after her sophomore year because she could not handle mass customized learning as an individual. Thankfully, I had those means, and I'm not happy that I had to do that, nor did I want to send her to private school, but she ended up succeeding there where she wasn't before. And I can't apply that one individual learning to the entire city, nor will I, but add me to that list of dozens of people with concerns. But back to, and that's PBL or the curriculum portion. And again, as the city manager and other councilors have said, we're here to focus on dollars and cents. And I will say that I have seen some conversation, more conversation happening between the school administration and the city staff than I think has happened in the near, well, as far as back as I can remember. Just from an outsider looking in, I'm very, very pleased with that. I want to encourage that to continue because I think we can provide a better service, both on the municipal and the school side, at a better value. Okay, there are certain things that you just can almost feel that are palatable. I think those are that's one of them. And Chairman Kindle, on your comment in your memo, which I appreciate, concerning education as a keystone, if you would, to economic development, you're absolutely right. And it's an interesting pull back and forth between education, quality of education, and tax dollars. And one could argue either way that they're both equally important as either an attractant or detractor to your community. So the process in which the school committee and the city council are working together, I think needs to be addressed. And I'd like to take some time and talk with school committee members as well as city councilors and look at different ways to address the process, i.e. more time, even up to and including forming a bipartisan budget or finance committee that looks at both the school and municipal budget together to give recommendations before it gets to the deliberating bodies. So hopefully you're in favor of that, and something to think about and we can talk about in preparation for next year, regardless of how this vote goes tonight. I will comment on a couple things. One, I learned in business the hard way. There's three words: data, knowledge, and wisdom, and they go in order. Data is critical. You must collect data constantly in order to provide yourselves and your team with knowledge so you can make wise decisions going forward. I will say, and please don't take this as a criticism, that we're going wisdom, knowledge, data, almost in a backward sense, which usually doesn't lead itself to productiveness. I see it not with just with the school, but I also see it with a lot of other organizations as well. It's a paradigm shift. It goes right up there with return on investment. In order to get that return, you need data, knowledge, and wisdom. And then I'll leave you with this one quote, probably from the greatest philosopher, or one of the top philosophers of the last 100 years. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. Kenny Rogers. Now, I might laugh a little on that. Probably one of the sagest piece of advice I ever had listening to the radio. Our motto in Auburn is no steps back. It's not, you don't have to stop. We can. I think our founding fathers probably, and would probably say, it's okay to take a pause, a deep breath, and look at something before moving forward, whether it's budget, curriculum, or anything else. Okay? So I think some of those things, nobody will ever get in trouble or get mad if we say, wait a second, let's evaluate, maybe we made a misstep. Okay, so that's just my comment on that. With that, I'm going to turn it back to the City Council now and put this motion to a vote. Hold on, I got to find my cheat sheet.
Oh.
Okay, vote by show. I'm sorry, Councilor Titus?
One more comment?
Yes, please.
Just maybe a question. If we were voting for a budget, and I've only been done this 3 or 4 years now, so I don't know, could we ever make a motion to change the budget and vote for a changed, amended budget from the school department? Or do we have to go up or down vote on what was presented to us?
I don't think we have a line item veto, if that's pretty much, or the ability to add a rider.
Does anybody know?
It's up and down.
No, I'm not lying, I'm talking about generally, a budget number that's more or less than what's proposed, dollar amount.
That's the only thing.
I don't think so. Sue, do you have any comments on that, or find it,
We
Jill?
were thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
We don't think so.
You don't think so? So we either straight up or down, yes or no? Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to bring this out to a vote. By show of hands, all those in favor of the adopting of the fiscal year 2019 school budget, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstain? None being. The order carries by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll give it a second here for the... Nobody wants to stay for my workshops?
Just remember, I've got a 7 o'clock a.m. tomorrow morning.
We're going to go long.
First task force meeting.
No one to hold them, no one to fold them. Leroy. No one to walk away.
And,
No one to run.
I really think Andy's right. I think he could say he want to amend that budget, and he can lower it by $1 million if he wants to.
We have to do some digging. Y'all voted for it.
Well, yeah.
We voted it down, they would have to make
Answer. I don't believe that. I think there isn't.
Since you've been on the city council, you've never seen that.
Yeah, I asked
Okay.
him to cut that budget $1 million because I didn't approve the budget that was.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to call for an adjournment. Excuse me. Excuse me. Thank you. I'm going to move for an adjournment at this point. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Titus, second from Councilor Walker. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? None being. This special meeting has been adjourned.
Now you got to.
We'll now take a 5-minute break. We're going to come back for the workshops to commence. Thank you very much. Hi, welcome back. Thank you very much for being here. First on the docket is our library director. Okay, hold on one second. Right, correct? Yeah. Yeah. Where am I? Okay. Mamie, what's your last name?
Nye.
Nye. I knew that. I couldn't find it. I was looking all for it. I apologize. So, Mrs. Nye, the floor is yours.
Very much. Good evening, Mayor, Councilor, and city officials. I'm here tonight to present some information or background information about our request for the fiscal 19-year budget. I want to start out by letting you know that or iterating that our mission statement is to bring people, resources, and ideas together to engage, enlighten, and enrich our community. That's a mission statement that we've had for some time, and very proud of it. We have continuing goals. First of all, we help customers of all generations to learn, grow, and have fun. We prepare our children to start school ready to learn, foster an organizational and community culture of innovation, promote community workforce and economic development, broaden and strengthen community connections, maintain facilities, resources, and systems, and ensure a stable and dependable funding. Just to give you an example of some of the activities that we have and how we measure these. In fiscal year 2017, we loaned out 214,200 items. We averaged 630 visitors daily. We had 13,400 people attend our programs, and we had 149,200 visits to our website, and we maintain a collection of books, DVDs, audiobooks, CDs, and a number of different items, totaling 84,300. This is a synopsis of the revenues that we're requesting. The City of Auburn provides approximately 80% of our funding. We raise the other 20% through endowment income, investment income, other revenue, and donations and gains. We are working very hard to up our donations number. Currently, right now, we have our annual campaign, and we also have an online auction. This coming year, we are going to have to restructure some of our fundraising activities. So we are pretty much keeping everything at the same level as this year. You can see from our program expenses, we have trustee administration, which includes myself, our development coordinator, and an administrative assistant and bookkeeper. And we now have a bookkeeping service. Collection services involves those who are making decisions about what items we purchase, our IT person, and how our items are cataloged before they reach the shelves. Lending services, I think, speaks for itself, as does children's services. And then we have adult services, which includes our reference department, adult programming, teen programming, and much of our public computing. Our budget drivers are primarily staff expenses. They represent about 60% of our total operating costs, and that is in line with other libraries. This is the second raise that we've requested in 5 years. We have 10 full-time and 12 part-time people. Our materials expenses, cost of e-materials tend to be much higher than retail expenses, and that is something that's been going on for quite a while, ever since e-books became popular and audiobooks became popular. The publishers have dealt with it in a different way. When e-books first came out, some authors said, okay, you can, put my books in ebook format. Others said, no, you couldn't do that. Some publishers said, okay, we'll let you have the books for a certain amount of time, 6 months, and then the file will expire, or so many checkouts and the file will expire. And what they also have done is have made adjustments in that libraries pay a lot more for the materials than they do at a retail level. And that's because they see the use being concentrated in one area as opposed to being spread among a number of different buyers. So for example, what you might buy for a $30 audiobook might cost us $150, $180. So those are some of the costs that we're up against. It has evened out over the past few years, but still there is no common platform that we can work with. And we are part of the state's consortium for ebooks and for audiobooks, downloadable audiobooks, but we also supplement the collection with some of our own choices. We have our fixed expenses such as utilities, cleaners, insurance, etc. I thought I would give you an idea of some of our program highlights from the last year or so. We have started Reading Connects. We are working with the Androscoggin County Jail to furnish themed book bags for inmates to read to their children and so that we can encourage literacy on both levels with the children and with the adults. Those funds for that came from grant from Fails and Fails and from Yelp. We try and find as much grant money to support programs as possible. And I would say that we have an excellent grant writer and we do a very, very good job in getting a number of grants compared to the number that we apply for. College Night is a teen program. We bring colleges and students together to explore options, funding, programs, etc. Last year, I believe we had 13 schools come. It's like a mini college fair, but it's a little bit more substantial because the colleges have a chance to do some presentations and to really sit and talk with the students and the parents one-on-one. Media Literacy at Your Library is an adult program. We're assisting the American Library Association in developing programs to train library workers to better equip our adult patrons to become discerning news consumers. And basically what that is we're trying to fight the fake news problem. We're one of 5 libraries in the country that has been chosen to participate, and we're partnering with the Sun Journal, which is, I believe, one of the reasons why we were chosen to participate in that program. It's been really, all of these 3 programs have been really rewarding. Our challenges, which are pretty much ongoing, are sufficient staffing, increasing fundraising, keeping current with changes in libraries and our profession. Not only do libraries have to change, but the professionals who serve in the libraries also have to learn to be more flexible and to adapt to some of the changes that we're seeing. For example, we have about 50 public computers that are available for the public to use, and we're seeing a decrease in use of those as we go along. But what we're seeing are we're having more people come in to the library with their own devices, and every once in a while I'll take a walk around the library and try and count how many people are there. And so those normally would have been 20 people who would have been up on our computers. But our computers are used a lot by the social service agencies who bring their clients in to help them socialize and to give them the opportunity to use technology. And I just thought I would give you, this is sort of our feel-good page. The bottom picture is receiving money for the grants for the Reading Connects program. Statewide, there is a statewide effort to have everybody participate in the checkoff program for the Public Library Fund. We've received funds for that. We received funds from from Norway Savings Bank, and we have our online auction, and I'm going to put a plug in here for that. It starts May 28th, and so far we have about 75 items, wide variety of items. And then we have our book sale room, which is an ongoing fundraiser. And then last year we hosted Brenda Fontaine for the launch of her book, and she also presented us with a check in return. So we try and be out in the community as much as possible, and we try and meet our customers' needs and the community's needs.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. I will, say this. I'm sure it's universally appreciated, and it would be echoed by the rest of the council, so they don't have to say it. We appreciate everything you do. We very much appreciate your mission statement, as well as your goals and objectives. The library is an amazing resource for the entire city and beyond, and a beautiful addition. It has been, especially since your last expansion
Right.
project.
When I'm
Beautiful
out
building.
around and people ask me about the library, I tell people that we have a wonderful collection in a fabulous building with a great staff, great board of trustees, and great support from our community.
It's a well-loved institution. I'm going to open up to the council now for very pointed questions concerning the budget. And if we could, obviously, we'll move it along. I hate to say this, but not give the ever-glowing love of the library, which I know we all share, but take that for granted. Councilor Young?
The library is not a department of the city.
That's correct.
When it comes to, so the employees of the library are not city employees?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any way they benefit, you have your health insurance separate from the city?
We have it through the Maine Municipal Association, so.
And the
if
workman's
we get
comp
that,
the same?
We're able to get that through the city, but the plans are not the same.
Workman's comp?
Workers' comp are on our own for.
You're on your own, self-insured?
Yes,
And telephone system, is that part of the city network?
yes it is.
Okay, so there's some savings there?
Right. We try and balance what we get from the city with what we're able to offer the city. For example, after the library programs, city departments get priority in terms of using our meeting rooms. We host the backup servers are in our building. So we try and do as much as we can to make sure that it's a good relationship.
And the internet, is that funded by the state,
That is,
federal?
it's part of the Maine School and Library Network.
So that's no charge to the library?
It used to be no charge. Now we do have to pay a fee.
Where is that in your budget?
It's in our, I want to make sure, it's in our automation services budget.
Okay, so that's pretty much the level?
Right. If we had to go out and purchase the service that we get from the Maine School and Library Network, we would probably be paying close to $8,000. Right now, we're paying about $1,500 to $1,700.
Everybody gets charged a little bit extra on their phone bill to
Right.
pay for the library.
But the problem is that the phone bill is tied to landlines, and the number of landlines have decreased to such a point where that fund can no longer maintain the costs of the network.
People are catching on. Get a cell phone, you don't have to pay that tax.
We're trying to get it. We're trying to get cell phones covered somehow,
Uh-oh, watch out.
but at a very minimal rate.
Thank you.
Councilor Lasagna?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. In looking at the FY 18 and 19 in terms of revenues, the donations is just looking to go up $1,000. You've got a really good development person.
What had happened was after they did the expansion, everybody was pretty much tapped out in terms of donations. So since we've had Susan on board, what we have been working at is working at our annual campaign, working on our grants. And we need to start spreading out into the planned giving area and working with businesses too,
I think I would imagine you'd get a lot of support for that.
hopefully.
Yep, thank you.
Councilor Hayes?
Yes, just looking at expenses, the two bigger increases, library materials, I think you just explained that. More going to be.
Right. Yeah, we're trying to keep pace with increases.
Programs, as I was looking at your descriptions of programs, I guess what programs are you supporting with that money?
Generally, just about all of our programs, unless they're grant funded. For example, this would cover At the children's level, we do a number of programs, like we just did the Chewonki program, the Chewonki Owl program. We covers our story time, our dropping crafts programs, the supplies for that. Then at the teen level, we do a number of wellness programs, so it might cover speakers, and at the adult level, it'll cover authors, speakers, supplies.
Do you seek underwriters for certain programs?
We do, yes, we do. And that's primarily through the grants. For example, the Reading Connects program that we're doing with the county jail, that was underwritten by a specific grant from a law firm. Plus, we were able to secure a grant last year from Yelp, which is the online rating review service. So we try and do that as much as possible. We had, 2 years ago, we had a French program that we had gotten a specific grant from. Also, we've tried to bring in bilingual books, and we wrote a grant for that. So we try and do that as much as possible.
Thank you.
Councilor Titus?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. Maybe this is for the city manager first. I'm looking at our packets that we got a couple of weeks ago and the budget that we have, and then I'm looking at this and they don't agree, because I see that the library was asking for a budget of $1,009,958 proposed for FY19, and then what we're presented with tonight is 102,835. So it's quite a significant increase over the first packet we got.
That's a good question.
This is what I submitted.
This is what you submitted?
This is what you submitted?
Oh, no, that is just our program budget. The actual budget that I've submitted is this one. I don't know if you have copies of this one.
Which totals $1,009,958? Is
City of Auburn.
that the right number?
So the final number is $1,009,958.
That's from the city.
The city said, right,
Yes.
correct.
This prepared
Her
presentation
total budget
implies
is
the
more,
name
her total
cities.
budget is more than that. But
Right.
that's
This
what
is
she
just a
needs
city
from the
contribution.
This is the city side, yeah. Yeah.
Right, and I understand that, but this presentation tonight says City of Auburn, 998,189, which is last year's. And
Okay.
then 2019 proposed is about 28,000 more than what's in our packet, or 20,000 more. So I just want to know, what is their city contribution going to be? The one.
I think Councilor Titus wants to know, is it the lower number, maybe?
Well,
I can see where it says City of Auburn right here,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
128,000. That's
Yeah.
the City of Auburn contribution.
Okay, the one that it should be is $1,028,135.
That's what that is.
And that's
Okay,
what's in
that's
this,
your
but that's
total
not
budget.
what was in the original
I have to go
packet.
back and
So
look at
that's what my concern was, if we're
Okay. I'll
studying
have to
the
go back and
original.
look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wish to know which one should be,
We're probably going to go with that lower number. I just throw
Well,
that out there right now.
I just would like to know what number we're working with, that's all. That's my
Okay.
point there.
Let me go back and double check that.
Okay. I had two questions, though. One, I appreciate the library, and you're very dedicated, so I appreciate everything you do. But my question is just, for instance, the endowment. How much is the endowment that we're getting the income from?
The endowment that we're getting income from is, we have a total of just over $2 million as of the end of fiscal year that ended last year. That ended June 30th.
Okay, very good. And then the other question I had related to emails. Are you on the city's email system?
No, we use the Maine State School and Library Network.
So you don't use that in the Office 365, you don't participate
No,
in
we
that at all?
don't.
Is there any reason for that, or, I mean, is it something you're doing, paying extra for outside of the city system?
No, that is part of the package that we get with our internet connection. We get our internet connection, we get the ability to use the email service, and we also, they also host our website.
So like Word documents and Excel and all that, you're still on the older system where it's not cloud-based? 'Cause that's what we did. We went to a cloud-based system.
It's not cloud-based. Everything is saved on the cloud each night, but it's not a cloud-based system. They're not ready to handle that yet. So that's, rather than go outside and have to incur the expenses, which would be in addition to that, that fee that we pay, that right now it's just not feasible for us to do that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Councilor Fournier?
Yes, I just have one clarifying question and another one. In this particular description that you just passed out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 6 areas under operations. This is an area that you, in the operations subsection under each cost center, you went up by like 4%, 5%, 4, and 3.7. Is there like a common thread there?
There is. We have done some shifting around of personnel. And so, like, for example, under the administration part of it, where we have gone up in operations, we've only gone up 1.1% in salaries, but operations have gone up almost 5% because we've gone from having a bookkeeper on staff to contracting with her to provide services. So it's a shift in expenses.
Yep.
And we've hired an administrative assistant to help fill the void there.
Okay. The other thing is I was really impressed with the website visits. I mean, that's quite a bit.
Right, and it's going up all the time. We find that, and this is not unusual for the library, but people are accessing more of our content, our online content.
That's great. That's wonderful. And the other thing is, I know I've talked about, I'll report it out before, but if you could just do a little nutshell review of what the auction funding is earmarked for.
Okay, the auction funding is part of our, we consider that as part of our operating budget. So that supports a lot of our program expenses, materials, and other expenses. So it's not designated to support just one area, but it's part of our annual funding.
Thank you, and thank you. Keep up the good work. It's a
Thank you.
wonderful place, and you're doing a good job.
Thank you very much. Councilor Walker?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for all the work you do and all of your supporters. Without them, we'd really be in trouble on this end. So thank you that they're out there and they help you with everything.
Thank you. I have a very, very good staff, very dedicated.
Yes, you do.
Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to thank you for all your dedication and hard work and all your staff and everything that you guys put into all that you do to serve our community and all those that come to visit the library, as well as the visitors that come, because the library is a focal point due to its location. And when people don't have a lot to do, they come in and they tour the library. They may take out a book while they're here. They may rent a movie. So thank you for all that you do, or even go to a movie. I've had a couple constituents whose grandparents went there one day when you had a children's movie going on, and they were impressed at the level of services that you had provided, because they came from outer state, and they said, hey, my small town don't have nearly as much as you got going on.
Well, it's the support from the community, it's the support from the city that allows us to do the type of programming that we do. And we've been very fortunate in getting a lot of recognition nationwide for, with groups investing, with the American Library Association, for example, investing in us with the media literacy at your library. So that helps a lot when we're able to go to our funders and show them what we can do.
Thank you. We have a little cabal going on over there, so we're going to let them talk. A couple things I'd like to say first to wrap this up. First of all, what type of collaboration, if any, is happening between you and the Lewiston Public Library? And let me be a little bit more specific in my ask. Is there anything going on now or could go on in the future that would help realize positive savings for both organizations or just yours?
I would say at this point in time, probably in terms of, unless we were to combine the libraries, there probably wouldn't be any savings that would be realized. What we do try and do is, and we have stepped back from it primarily because we wanted to wait to see how things turned out with the merger question. We have had meetings over the last several years with a joint library board meetings, usually twice a year. Plus, our boards exchange a representative at each of our meetings. So
That's very helpful.
We've talked about trying to do programming and whatnot, and we've been able to do a couple of different projects together. A couple of years ago, we worked with Lewiston and actually a couple of other libraries where we did a project that was to, we worked on developing programs for seniors that had to do with technology. So we do keep in touch. We have the shared card. You know, you can take your card and borrow in either Lewiston or Auburn. You can bring your books back to either library and they get sent back through the delivery service, so we do have that. But in terms of specific programs, we haven't done anything now for a little bit.
On the same line of questioning, it sounds horrible, like you're on a witness stand. I forget I said that. But on the same kind of theme, Auburn School Department. Mm-hmm. Do you foresee or do you even envision the faint possibility of working in tighter conjunction, if you don't already, with the Auburn School Department's library services?
We do a lot of informal programming. For example, we now share a teen advisory board. The high school and the library share a program for advising the libraries of what types of programs are interesting for teens. We do a lot of cross-promotion, but in terms of doing specific programs, we haven't done that now for a while. We worked together when we had our NASA exhibit 2 years ago.
Yeah. And if I could, I'd like you to think about that, and as a superintendent and the city manager, start prepping and talking about potential consolidations or being more in line with like departments in order to save money and provide a better service. Mm-hmm. The library stands out as a clear duplication. And whereas you serve different pools, the fundamentally mission is similar. So I'd like to see if there's any potential there. I'm going to turn it over just for a minute to the city manager. Then I got a parting question.
I'm on a timer maybe, so I need clarification on the amount requested. What I have is $1,009,958, and maybe tonight is not the night to try and figure that out. But we should definitely have a conversation about that. Mm-hmm. That's the figure that I'm proposing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. So, yep.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna, and the reason I've kind of went on this theme is there's a couple of things that backtrack before that. Parking. I don't want to muddy the situation, but there has been some talk, obviously, and proposals done about potential parking alternatives at the library. And I know you all have met too, and Councilor Forney, my rep on the library committee, has been very good in feeding that information back to me and keeping me informed. Do you own the land?
The city owns the land.
The city owns all the land not covered in the footprint of the building?
The city owns the building and the land. We rent the building from the city.
And do we have a calculation on what that expense is annually? Is it $1? About? Probably time to adjust for inflation. We'd end up paying for it anyway, so that probably wouldn't be a great idea. So maybe $1.03. Okay, so that's that. We'll come back to parking at a later point. I know it's important to you, the board, as well as the community, and it needs to be addressed. Lastly, we had, as you're well aware, a budget shortfall due to a clerical error. The city departments, including the school department, have been very forthcoming and trimming proportionally parts of their budget. It's a work in progress. Doing some rough calculations, if we would ask you to do the same thing as the Auburn Library, and granted you're a quasi-municipal, for lack of a better term, organization with your own separate board, that would roughly equate to around $13,000 to $14,000 over this next budget, the decrease in what currently is proposed. I would like to dig into that number, and I'd love to see you come back with that modified number.
Okay.
and taking, because that would be proportionally fair across the board. And we always hate to ask it, especially at the 11.5-hour mark. But I do think it's appropriate in this case. Counselors? Counselors, yes? Any comment on that?
What was the amount that you?
It's probably, rough math, based upon her budget as a percentage of the overall city budget, approximately 1%, which in this case would equal, or 1.25, equate anywhere from $9,000 to $13,000.
Thank you.
And a decrease, okay? So that's my parting thoughts there. Any other questions from the council? Comments? If not,
The only comment I have is I have met, of course, the Madam Librarian across the river, and so we're very fortunate as Twin Cities to have two excellent Madam Librarians.
Marcella's doing a fabulous job.
Yes,
And we do talk quite a bit.
it's great.
and the last thing, I want to thank you very much for all the help you've put into our sesquicentennial planning. I do believe that will showcase the city of Auburn, but also put a very, very strong spotlight on everything you're doing at the Auburn Public Library. So that's part of what excites me about this process next year. Looking forward to getting that spotlight on deserving organizations. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Jeez, I got way too much stuff here. Oh, it's right there. Look at that. Next on the agenda would be a presentation by our Economic Development Department, Mr. Cousins and Mr. Chammings.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. We have a short presentation on the Economic and Community Development budget. As you'll see, our budget is down roughly 14%. Our revenues are up, which is good news, but as far as impact to budget, we use very little from the general fund, as you'll see, so any lowering out of our accounts really doesn't have a lot of effect on the mill rate and the commitment. Who we are and what we do, there's a description of our department, which I had in a package, and I apologize, we got out late. We started working on amending some of our budget numbers to help out the city with its indiscrepancies. Our mission, the Auburn Economic and Community Development Department, is to improve, maintain, and protect a vibrant community environment and enhance the quality of life for our residents, businesses, customers, and partners, which also provides decent housing and expanding economic opportunities for persons of all income levels. We accomplish this endeavor by providing exceptional facilities, programs, and services that our citizens desire in a fiscally responsible manner. This is an overview, which I'm sure you've seen before, of the Economic and Community Development Department. It's 3 divisions and 1 team. A lot of it's cross-trained through each one of the listings. You have economic development, planning, permitting, code, and electrical, community development, block grant program. A lot of our people are cross-trained from code enforcement officers to neighborhood service coordinating, and urban development is also cross-trained with planning. So we have distinct divisions, but we all work as one team. The proposed ECD budget, the large numbers that make it up, economic development, community development, planning, and code staff is $783,000. The electrical budget that includes electrical salaries is $433,000. Program subscriptions, CCI loan fund, workforce development, dues, marketing, AvCog, et cetera, is $206,000. We will be making recommendations on the CCI loan funds, looking at repurposing them, but for a practical matter, it does not affect the commitment. But we will be coming in to see where we could utilize those funds in other areas that may. Everything else is phone, supplies, vehicle maintenance, gasoline, public notices, and travel. So as you see, fiscal approved in 2018, 1717028. We're proposing 1471918. with a decrease of $245,110, or 14.3%, rounded. If you look at our budget, what you'll see is the budget breakdown, which we kind of went over, but just shows it proportionally. We're an entitlement community, so we get CDBG funds. So our funding sources are $485,000 from TIF, $211,000 from CDBG, $311,000 from permits and fees, and $463,000 comes from the general fund. We have had record year also of building permits, but also other fees too. So currently this year, we're $48,810 ahead of our adopted revenue. If you switch to a funding source comparison, it just gives a full budget breakdown compared to without electrical. It's kind of unusual to have the electrical division in with economic development and planning. It's not unusual to have electrical inspector, obviously, but we carry the whole budget for the whole city, as you'll see in the next breakdown of what that encompasses. So if we did not have the electrical in our budget, only 3% of the budget would come from the general fund. That also, with our fees that we have, permits and so on, could be adjusted. We're dealing with Lewiston now to make sure that we're staying pretty equal in the state of Maine. We're a little low now, but we think that we could actually be at a 0% from general funding with amendments to our fees. If you see the electrical budget, as you can see, a large portion of it's lease and utilities. So city-owned street lights is $42,000. Lease street lights is $185,000. That makes up the bulk of the electrical budget. And you have salaries, uniforms, and such. But obviously, the largest portion of that is leasing and utilities. This is just another breakdown in the bar of the CDBG and the TIF funds. Those just we'll just switch past that. So the drivers to the budget, the PS General 220 reduced by 52%. That was due to the workforce development reduction. We put quite a bit of money into that a couple of years ago, and it was brought forward to the state by other outside agencies that what we were intended to do wasn't allowed. So that workforce development was never reproduced or put back into a different form. So we had lowered that amount down. We had saved some money into that because there's been some talk with the school to do some sort of workforce development with them, but substantially reduced. As you know, the workforce development is the words of the year, and every agency in the state of Maine is dealing with it now. So that's where the largest decrease is. We have an increase of gas and oil. We do have an increase in our salary by 6%. That's the reinstatement of the second electrician, partially offset by lower contracting costs. So we have a second electrician being reinstated, and with that, we will eventually lower out the contracting costs. We lowered it slightly this year, not knowing what we would get for an electrician or where they'd be at or when we would hire them. We expect next year to that amount to lower again. And then when you go back into our electrical permits, they're currently, we're projecting $33,000 ahead. So right now we're $10,031 ahead of the projection in our electrical permits, so which would offset that in the future. Utilities were reduced and street light and repairs increased. So that was the biggest drivers to our budget. New value and investment. Permit value as a measure of new investment is increasing. As you can see, 15, 16, 21 million, 16, 17, 29 million, 17, 18, 34 million, and we have a strong year going now. What happens with the new value is, as you can see, we can switch over. We have estimation of construction and permit fee collections, which are all looking good. But when you start getting into the taxable value, you have things such as, we'll get into that. Push into the, yeah, there we go. Well, yeah, this one, page 12. Okay. We have manufacturing equipment that was taxable that's now exempt. We have nonprofits and tax exempt investments, and we have an increase in the homestead exemption. So basically, every year, we're starting out anywhere from $18 to $16 million backwards because of depreciation of personal property. And this year...
I'm sorry, 18 to 16 million backward due to depreciation, non-prof, so forth?
We lose anywhere between $8 to $16 million in depreciation each year.
8 to 16. Okay. Thank you, sorry about that.
And this year, the state has expanded the Betty program to include service industries such as hotels. I believe only one hotel has applied since this year, and the application period's closed, so I don't know what the impact's going to be on that. It's not something I follow. But the homestead exemption is also being increased. It started out at $10,000. It's now up to $20,000. We do think we're going to get 62% return on that. But then again, you're losing, I think, $20 million in value there. So that's what we're looking at, is why doesn't the taxable value increase so quickly? We have a hard time keeping up with it because, like I said, we're starting out each year anywhere between $8 and $16 million in a hole just through depreciation. Did we miss this one here? Yeah, we'll back up that one. So as you do see, there's the estimated cost of construction over the last 3 years, and these are the permit fees collected this year. These are just building permit fees, so we're projecting out a record year. And our actual fees altogether, as I mentioned before, we budgeted building permits for 100,000, and we have we're projecting 196,000 from that, and we currently have 163,000, so we're 63,000 ahead at that point. So if everything goes, it continues as it is now, we're probably going to be roughly 100,000 and having our actual revenues above our adopted revenues, which then could go back into the fund balance. What am I missing? Capital improvement plan. Our total capital improvement plan is $1,591,800. Out of that, $556,800 from bonds. The largest portion of that is for the new Auburn Village, and we have been looking at the CIP along with the city manager and the other departments just to see where we can try to lower that total amount, which doesn't lower the total amount for the year, but it'll lower the bond and the debt service for the next year. So the vast majority of that's going to the new Auburn project, and out of that, the TIF is picking up the bulk of that. Do we have a slide on the new Auburn project? The new Auburn Village Center, I'm going to let Eric go over this project, what's coming up in the next year. We have some exciting things happening.
We currently have construction funding in this year's budget. It's a combination of a grant from the federal government and capital improvement monies that were budgeted in the current year. We are looking at $886,000 worth of improvements in the coming year. That's the CIP budget. The cost estimates are being finalized now, but it looks like they're going to be between $850,000 and $860,000 in that year. So there probably will be some remaining funds from that. The following elements will be constructed as part of the current year CIP. Filling of the project area, we realized a substantial savings by obtaining fill from the 7th Street construction project that is just getting started now. A significant portion of the Riverway Road you can see on the graphic on the screen. It won't, in this year's construction, go all the way through to connect to 2nd Street, and that's mainly due to grading issues that are going to take more time for people to decide what they want to do with their properties and how they want them to be used in the future. And we really have to stop the grading there at this point in time. The amphitheater and sitting walls, it'll really become a usable greenway park area. Private parking lot. 15 Broad Street had donated land to the city when they bought that property in exchange for an agreement that the city had signed a number of years ago that the city would improve the parking lot to be brought up to grade to match the Riverway improvements. And at the end of this phase, 3 sites will be ready for future development. There's one next to Firehouse Grill, one right next to All About You Salon, and sort of the premier site along the Riverway, the larger block at the center of the graphic that overlooks the confluence of the 2 rivers.
I put Eric on the spot. I was stuffed up there for a second, so he did a good job. I think that's pretty much the summary of our total budget, and we're certainly here to answer any questions you have.
Start off, thank you very much, gentlemen, for this. There's probably going to be some questions here, of course. I'm going to start off on my left this time with Councilor Gary. Councilor Walker.
Yes, when will we stop the bleeding of the, what you talked about, 8 million, 16 million loss every year?
Are you talking about did you say the 8 to 16 million per year depreciation?
Yeah.
We can show you projections of that. That's going to continue every year. And what happens is you have the depreciation that goes in, and as something's replaced on a low end of depreciation, if they do, then once that is replaced, it's then tax sheltered by the state, so you're replacing something that's depreciated down to 0 with something at 50%, and then we get a reimbursement off of that. So it's a continual cycle.
Councilor Fournier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The amphitheater and sitting walls, are those similar to the sitting walls that I see on the other side of the river in Lewiston, all along the bankings there? It's so pretty, and it holds so many people.
I'm not sure if they'll be the same materials.
It's granite.
It is granite. Most of the walls that are being proposed here are concrete.
They won't last.
They could be,
You know, I mean,
other materials. Our engineers are saying that these could be attractive and durable walls.
that would be my concern, because I know when we had St. Louis Church, the poor thing was falling apart, but a lot of it was built, you know, on what they could afford in those days, and that was poured concrete. So concrete does crumble over many years, of course, but I was hoping we'd have, if we could afford it, the granite would be nice, so it sands of time.
We can talk to the designers, but I know that currently they're proposing mostly concrete.
Okay. Another question I had was the lighting in the city, where lighting is. We go from the very, very little lighting to too much lighting. So I'm hoping that when the lighting gets put in, that they're not so close together. You know, I think that, I don't know what the regulations are for that, but so that it won't be as costly to put too many close together. I'm going to use New Auburn as an example. I know it was grant money, but they're pretty close together along Main Street. Yeah. So that's too tight. And the same thing happened with the grant money up on Park Avenue. If we could have taken half of those nice lanterns and put them at the other end of of Park Avenue where it meets up with Lake Street, that would have been nice. So I'm just, word of caution, that's all. Thank you.
Councilor Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just got a few questions. One of them, the workforce development funds, that was CBG funds, right? CBDG? that was allocated for that purpose, but then had to go back into that pool? I mean,
No, sir, that originally came from TIF funds, and that's why.
so where'd that money go back in if we didn't use it? Did it
Well,
end up-
we reallocated some of it into the new Auburn project. And anytime we reallocate those, we have to come back in front of this board to reallocate that.
So that's in this part of this money for the, when we're looking at, that was another question I'll have, is when the TIF funds being spent on the new Auburn project, part of that money is workforce development that didn't get used in the current year?
Yeah, I think we transferred some from that workforce development. I came out last year before, as part of that $680,000.
That's what that, but this is only $200,000 difference, so the 680, a portion of that 680 is this money?
Well, this has been the second year that the workforce development was put into place 2 years ago, so we cut it the first year, allocated out of it, and then this year we're cutting another section out of it because it hasn't been utilized.
I just wanted to make sure I know where the money was shifted to, that's all.
Yeah, anything, it has to follow the program development and state statutes, and anytime we're going to do anything with that, we would come to this board for approval.
Okay, next question has to do with the LED lighting upgrade. You have some savings here already calculated. That's that part of that $88,000 is due to the fact that part of the year we should be on LED lighting, or?
That we do anticipate a savings in the
Anticipating a
upcoming year
savings there,
because
so
of
that's,
that.
okay. So I was just gonna say, those two numbers together were the savings that you're really showing here. If you take those out, it shows about a little bit of an increase in spending over the previous year, due largely to the increase in salaries of 6%. What was the reason for the increase in salaries for 6%?
Well, the largest increases, most of our salaries are paid for by TIF funds, CDBG funds, and permitting. But the largest portion of that is the new position of reinstating that electrician. That we had 3 electricians. We went through this a couple of months ago. So it's the reinstatement of that electrician one that we have.
Are we fully staffed now, as far as what was originally proposed 2 years ago by council to increase the staff in your department?
We're fully staffed. This budget, we're in a hiring process of electrician 1, and besides that, we're fully staffed. We do have 2 people.
So the 6% is largely due to the fact that we're going to be hiring another electrician?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Next question has to do with the $100,000 for working with Community Concepts on the loan program. I would assume that where we had it in the last year, it really wasn't utilized, so that's just a carryover of funds from last year? We're not doing $200,000 in a pool anywhere, it's still $100,000?
No, it does show as a budget amount from that TIF, and we didn't pull it out because it doesn't have an effect on the commitment, but we will be coming back to the board to recommend reutilizing that, probably shifting it into the downtown parking and walkability rather than bonding out of that account. But then again, that is something we're going to come in front of the board with after we do that. We've met a couple of times with Community Concepts. When they set that up, it was a good offer. They were going to match everything at least 1-to-1, if not 2-to-1, and it had to be Auburn businesses. We just haven't seen a lot of activity or any activity there. So with that being said, we have no loss there, like it's an outside agency that didn't do anything for us. We get 100% of those fundings back because those funds were dedicated for loans for businesses only, not for administrative purposes.
So the money from last year is somewhere else, or is that the $100,000 that we budgeted for last year?
The money wasn't bonded, so the TIF money is currently Community Concepts Finance, has that in their accounts. We're going to be requesting by our letter of understanding with them that they return that money this fiscal year.
And then this money that's in there now for this year, that $100,000 is not going to be a Community Concepts line. That's going to be taken out of there as well after budget season, because it's in for Community Concepts.
We will not disperse that. I mean, Peter's my boss, but I'm not recommending dispersing that any more money out, and that we bring that money back in. We've had discussions over that, and there's no hard feelings there. It was all good intent. They're a good organization. It's just not being utilized. We'd like to see it repurposed.
Well, you understand, Michael, my concern, if it's in the budget, we're budgeting $100,000 more for community concepts, and then you can do what you want to with after the budget?
No.
I shouldn't think it should be in there. I think it should be cut out.
What we'll
Not
be,
even be in
what we'll
there.
be doing is coming back, and we can, I mean, we can cut that out of there. What we would do is come back to ask to repurpose that probably for either New Auburn or the walkability for the city, depending on where the most need is there. We think we can straight face looking at some other projects that need funding for that to help with the value problem that we had this year too. So we haven't had a chance to look at all the options for that. And then again, those monies we can expend, we need to come back to the council and get permission from the council.
Well, what I'm concerned about, and I'm just going to go back to when we first started all this, and I was one of the opponents of defunding LAGC and having our own system. And now what you're telling me is the system we installed, especially the loan part of it, isn't working. Nobody's interested. We're not getting any loans. So that means part of that whole process is failing.
Well, at the end of that, the $100,000 all comes back to the municipality, so there was no
Well, I mean, but
loss.
the idea wasn't the money, it was the use of it and growing businesses, and that was the whole purpose of it, and that's a failure in itself.
Yeah, it was meant to be a gap fill financing.
Right,
that it was sent over
absolutely.
there. And AvCog showed some interest in it too, and there was good intent, but it just didn't pan out.
No need. There was no demand.
There was no demand.
Okay.
So there was no demand. So that money should go out and be somewhere else. It shouldn't be earmarked for community
I
concepts. in
think
that
we need to
budget.
look at, just if I could interrupt, why there was no demand. I think that's the crux of the problem.
That's what I mean, yeah.
It's
I
where is that demand? So I think we can go back to that, but it's a good, valid point. There's money sitting there that can come back to be used someplace else or to offset shortfalls.
Yeah, we had some limitations on the money. Obviously, it had to be, it didn't have to be an Auburn resident, but it had to be an Auburn business, and it had to be put into one of the TIF zones to go along with the program development, which had some variables on it too. But community concepts money isn't cheap either. When you go there to borrow money, it's because you're not getting full funding from a bank.
Now, is it something that they promote, but did we promote it very well? And
We cross-promoted. In fact, this year they were allowed by some of their funding sources to use some of their money for promotions, and they did promote it and had flyers out and such. And we point people towards it all the time. At the time, it just looked like a good way to hedge some money, have them, leverage some money. You know, if they were going to do 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 for a business that's looking to open in Auburn. They make money and try to operate off of those accounts, obviously, like a bank would. We didn't really care much about the interest. We just want to see business to be able to have gap funding.
all right, so again, I think we have to look at that whole thing. My last question results to the TIF offset in one of your detailed pages. I can't remember which one you'd call it. It's in the right where the regular salaries, expenses, and it shows TIF offset and the CDBG offset. That TIF amount, that's coming from any specific TIF?
That's, which are we on here? Okay. Well, that comes from the program development that's written into the TIF from the tax shifts, from the tax benefits from the
Yeah,
shifts.
but which TIF, do you know? Do you know where that comes from?
Probably the bulk of it would come out of 10, but I'd have to look at where the revenues come from. I mean, Jill's the one that adjusts them, but I certainly can get you a summary of where that's coming from.
It'd be very important, because I know that part of our little issue that we had with assessing had to do with a TIF district. So I'd just like to know if,
Yeah, it may have
using TIF
something
money
to do
for
with
this.
TIF district, but it's not related. That's a value. It's something that's really not related to those amounts.
Yeah, say that again?
That's a value issue on how a value is sheltered and put back into the commitment.
Okay.
It's not an issue
Well, I
of the
understand
revenues
that, but
from
if we
the
took
TIF
money from a
itself.
TIF that was not funded fully because of a error in assessing, then I just want to know where that money's been going, and if we need to pull it back, maybe that's where we need to pull it back. I don't know. We're trying to figure out. Question?
I think that's I appreciate the question. I think that's a separate issue from the assessing error.
Well, if TIF funds are used
It's
for this,
Yeah, it was a separate issue. It really didn't have to do with what you're thinking about. This was an issue where a card got pulled on a TIF for a certain business and the card did not get put back. It doesn't have to do with the line of questioning that you're thinking about in terms of the TIF funds themselves. And on the previous question about community concepts, I can tell you that Michael and Eric are both very focused on that. Michael and I have met twice with the director of community concepts to talk to him about it, to try and see if there's something we could do to try and make that program so that there's more participation. And we're going to have to look at doing something different, obviously, than
Well, I think we should do something different, because like I said, when I was one of those that was a proponent of doing our own thing, if it's not working, we got to try something else. That's all I got to say. And whether I don't necessarily say we go back to another LAGC type program, but maybe there's other options that are a blend of those kind of things. But there's got to be something, because if it's not working.
And I will say, I think, let's not forget, the crux of the problem isn't the program, it's the demand for the program.
Right.
There's a bigger question that an LAEGC type organization, can't solve because they're not set up to solve. It's why, to understand why, where, and that's tied into a population stagnation. It's tied into business stagnation and growth. It's tied into valuation. We're starting to see some trickles of light through here from permits being pulled. But I just want to caution. First of all, I want to say, thank you. Yes, you should recognize very quickly, based upon data, knowledge, and wisdom, when something's working, quantify if it's working or not working, pull back if needed, or at least pause, and take those funds back.
That's all
and
I'm
let's think
asking.
about it.
Just a revolving thing. And if you would give me that TIF information, I would really appreciate the source of the TIF money that goes into these projects.
Not looking at the issue we had, but if Procter & Gamble, it's not going to have any effect on that particular TIF, but we can give you a summary to show you all TIFs, what programs are against them. We keep a copy of that.
No, I'm just, yeah. Good.
Thank you. Anything else on?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Councilor Hayes?
Actually, looking at the budget, look at the last item, the capital operating, requested 61,000, managers suggesting 30,000. The explanation, it goes back to operating capital items CCIP for FY18, so I guess I'm not sure what the explanation is there.
Well, I think that was the traffic light site. You have the budget in front of us, so we have to dig that up. Capital operating, so, I think it's the, what's that?
I think the reduction was.
Well, it's just the CIP, so he probably, that wasn't our numbers, but that's probably the, yeah, that's the manager's recommended operating, which is 30,000, looks like it's 15, and Peter can correct me, these are his numbers, traffic signal intersection relamping, 15,000. The preemption upgrades, those are the systems on our lights that allow police and fire to go through, and the chief can explain that more than I could, and the LED upgrade to the city walking paths and industrial park lighting. I believe that's what that is.
I guess I'm still confused. Capital operating, I mean, is it an administrative cost for those upgrades, or what are we?
We proposed those improvements as part of our capital improvement plan, and between the manager and the finance director, they decided that
So
they
it's
were
coming
better
out of
funded out of
operating
current
funds.
revenues than they were bonded projects.
Okay. That does take me to the capital improvement plan, and it is related to the questioning that Councilor Titus was following with respect to community concepts and that 100,000. I guess a problem, I always think of bonding for capital needs, and in the past, I think we've always had the understanding that it was a definite need, and it was for a capital item that had a life expectancy. And I guess I'm having trouble with actually $250,000 bonding for dangerous building demolition, comprehensive plan acquisition, property acquisition, and strategic plan. right now, as I understand from earlier discussion, we don't have any buildings that are identified at this time. And I don't think we have any, I think the same thing was true with respect to acquisition of property supporting the comprehensive plan at this time. And I guess I'm still, strategic plan, we've had some explanation of it, but I guess I'm still not clear as just where we're going with that. And I don't see that in the near future we're going to see definite identify projects that would come out of that we should be bonding for. So I guess, again, and I guess it ties into that $100,000 community concepts, you know, to me, and I guess as I looked at the total capital improvement plan, I guess it was, and I think with the rebudgeting, maybe unauthorized, unobligated funds might be reallocated anyway to other projects, but I guess just as a statement, I guess in earlier discussions, both with Public Works and with police, I did ask the question of life. So again, I could see bonding for projects or for capital items that have a life, but if we don't have an identified project, I can't support bonding money.
Councilor Hayes.
Yes, sir.
On the strategic plan implementation, I own that one. That's Michael. The thought behind that is as a result of the strategic plan process that we're starting, which may kick off in the fall because of what's happening right now. There will be some projects that we think will fit into the bonding. There are needs right now that we have as a city that I'm aware of, that I know that the strategic plan will be evaluating with the different committees that we have and the people that are involved. So in a sense, it's a placeholder right now to be able to have that money available to be able to address certain projects. I'm just going to give you one. I don't know where this ends up on the priority list, but the municipal beach, for example, for the city, which I had the opportunity to go see with Dan Goyette to look at that municipal beach, which is a gem for the city. I had not seen that before, even though I worked in Lewiston for about 10 years. I was amazed at it. We've got the issue with the water there. We need to do something with that. And Dan has started looking into that in terms of what we need to do. Maybe we can get some grant funding and funding from the feds to help us with that issue. That's the concept behind the Strategic Plan Implementation Fund. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, but I guess because I questioned some items before that we were going to fund with unallocated funds, I guess those, to me, were bondable. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'd rather hold this approach, hold the unallocated funds to be used later should a real need arise. So I guess it's just readjusting the use of money, but I guess, you know, with our current situation, it may be that we need some of those unallocated funds to be utilized to balance our budget.
Right.
Councilor Lasagna, or I'm sorry, Councilor Hayes, do you have anything else? Parting comment?
No, that was it. Actually, I was glad the discussion with respect to the community concepts.
Councilor Lasagna.
Thank you, Councilor Tice, for bringing up the community concepts, because I had a question about that too, and part of it is, shouldn't it really the onus be on them to be doing the marketing and getting out there?
Yeah, yes, I mean, we gave some funds, like they get funding from 5, 6 different organizations, just like ABCOG does. We don't have loan officers here, so we thought it may be a program that worked. like we were saying, it wasn't working out, let's bring the money back in and repurpose it. I mean, these weren't monies that was pulled out, we mentioned LAGC, then we took their money and put it in there. These are TIF funds that we said that we could utilize by our program development and state statute to use for these loans, and we did that. It's not working, so we're going to be recommending that we bring it back in. We have CDBG programs that are out there that aren't working up to par, and we're going to be coming back and seeing how we could redo those programs. So we're not batting 1,000. If we try to bat 500, we're doing well. So that's just one of the things. We're not seeing results. We didn't lose any money besides a little bit of interest we would have had in the bank on it. And let's bring it back in and repurpose the monies.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. As I'm saying, that really the onus is not on you. It's on Community Concepts and why they weren't able to do this. But thank you for that. And then the other thing is, you talked about lost taxable value. Can you just explain to me about expanded eligibility?
So basically, with the state, they allow certain things to go tax exempt for business exemptions, and some they don't. And now I don't have the list in front of me, and Miguel may know, probably not. But hotels, for instance, they were tax exempt, and they weren't allowed to have a beta exemption. Now they're going to, and we have several hotels here. I believe only one has applied this year, but as soon as the rest find out, I'm sure they're going to apply for it too. So when they extend what you can apply for, it really just lowers that value that's added to the top of our value. And like I said, when we're depreciating now, we're losing anywhere from 8 to 16 million, depending on the depreciation schedules of each of the individual businesses.
Thank you. And finally, and thank you, Councillor Hayes. The strategic plan idea, I hope we have quite a bit more time to really dig into it and think about it. I appreciate setting aside money with the potential, but I really want to be able to spend more time with that.
Yeah, I can just make a quick comment on that. When I was in Cumberland County, as the county manager there, we did a similar thing. We actually set up two funds under strategic plan, one a technology fund, the other one was space needs, which we utilized very well because we had the forethought and the vision to set the money aside for being able to address those two critical needs that we had at the time. It's the same kind of concept, so that we can move ahead and do some things that need to be done. If this strategic plan is as successful as I think it will be in terms of identifying needs and recommendations for the city, it will be a challenge for us to be able to address these needs. That's the concept behind it.
It's going to be a challenge without some readily available funding. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Young.
Yes. For years, we've funded economic development with TIF funds and block grant funds. And I'm not saying that that's not right, but occasionally I talk to a constituent and it says, well, we shouldn't be spending that money for that. Now, is there a certain law that says you can't spend it for anything else?
There's parameters where you can spend those monies, yeah. And it's allowed, the TIF money is allowed to cover economic staff. So what we were directed to do when I first got here, before I got here, it was to try to utilize non-general fund resources as much as possible to keep the tax burden down on the taxpayers.
But if those funds could be used, if TIF funds could be used for other things, then that would also have a result. So there must be a law that says you can only use them for certain purposes. So economic development is one thing that you can use it for.
Yes, because if you just captured tax value for TIFs to lower the mill rate, then it wouldn't. The state of Maine wouldn't allow that. They have to review them because it's intended for infrastructure and economic development, and whatever is allowed in the statute is a short list of things. If not, then we would just max out our 5% allowable tax shift to try to lower our, and use it for our operations to offset against other municipalities. So that's not the intent of the program. The program began out as intention for infrastructure and moved into economic development, and then we're only allowed to utilize 2% per district and 5% of the total of the city, and we're not close to that now. But these funds, if you didn't use it for payroll, then what we can do, raise the payroll out of the general fund. We're still doing the same amount of projects.
Well, the other thing I should hope that we will receive some economic development with the seed money that we're using for, like, for the new Auburn type of thing once that's going.
Yeah, what I'm
that land will be sold in apartment buildings or businesses or marketplace or something will be built.
We've seen, like I said, record numbers of building permits coming in this year, and we have a lot of projects pending. Of course, it takes, if something doesn't exist April 1st, if something's in the ground on April 2nd, it doesn't exist to us. So if someone spent $5 million on a building on April 2nd, it doesn't exist to us for another year. And then depending on the tax credits they get, how that gets lowered down to the state. And we utilized TIFs a lot beyond the tax shift in the past, which is fine because they were looking at creating jobs and they weren't worried as much as about the value. Now we have a lot of jobs with 2.7% unemployment, and we're looking at lowering them TIFs to the cap value so we can add value to the city and try to stabilize our mill rate. That's been a large goal of our department, is to try to get the mill rate stabilized or some point in time even be able to lower it by the value. But as we stated earlier, we're starting out $8 to $16 million in the hole. We would like to, at some point in time, take a couple of trips with some of the council members and show them some of these projects from one end of the city to the other that's coming in. We've got some pending projects, we've got some current projects, and that's really looking very good for us in the city. We've been having a lot of meetings with the state of Maine because we've got some expansion areas that hasn't been made public yet. So that's something we're looking to do in the near future, is perhaps get a small van or such and go around and show some of these areas.
Now, you said earlier that some of the electrical permits are low, or did I hear you say that?
No, our electrical permits are high. We actually, our permits are $10,000 over budgeted revenue so far. We've taken in $10,000 more than we projected for the year already.
No, I mean what we charge people.
No, our permits are average at best, our costs.
Okay.
Our charges.
But you did say that we received more money than we expected to receive.
Yeah, overall, what we put in the chart is the actual building permits, which 163,000, and we adopted a revenue of 100,000 for that. So currently, we've collected $235,310.59 in revenues from permits and development reviews, citations, and such, electrical and plumbing. And we budgeted 186,000. We adopted 186,500. So we're $48,810 ahead of our actual revenue projected.
Well, that's good.
Yes, it is.
People are building in Auburn, right?
Yes, and they're paying their fees. And like I stated, we have delegated authorities in a lot of areas, and we charge a lot less than the state of Maine. And my opinion, only I don't know if it's a fact, but Eric would probably back me up, is that even if we charged the same as the state, which sometimes is 3 times as much as we charge, they'd still want to go through our department because we stream them through a lot quicker than the state of Maine does.
How do we compare to Lewiston? Are our rates the same?
We are currently pretty close, I think, on almost everything. That's why we're dealing with Lewiston. We don't want to be too far to whack, and we're talking with them about slightly adjusting the permit fees. And like everything else, everybody likes to see the other guy go first, and so we are going to do a presentation with them, but they're very open to it because we are, Lewiston and Auburn, we are lower than a lot of places.
Well, it used to be when I worked for LePage Bakery and Nissens went up on their loaf of bread, LePage went up on their loaf of bread too, and they said, what are you doing? We're meeting the competition.
What we have is, what we're looking at to adjust wouldn't affect a homeowner, someone building a garage or a deck. It's the larger people that come in and build chains and franchises that when they go to other places, they have budgeted amounts for their permitting, and when they come here, their budgeted amounts always larger than they have to spend. We actually get people that come here that are looking at chain and development, people that build around the world, around the United States. They know we're low here, and that's not a bad thing. We just don't want to be too low, but if we can increase it enough to cover our cost, like I said, we're not looking at anything that's going to affect the average person that comes in that wants a porch, wants a garage, or something like that.
Okay, so you did say that you were suggesting we might look at our rates, our permits.
Yeah, commercial.
Commercial. Okay, thank you.
One question.
Councilor Forney, I'll come back to you, Councilor.
One quick question. We're bonding, you're suggesting that we bond $1,000 for dangerous building demolition. I'm going to come back and revisit a concept that I talked about before. Are we demolishing buildings that belong to the city, or that should be the expense of a landlord?
Well, if you look back, I think two buildings you probably remember, Newberry Street, there was a fire there.
Right.
So that we paid to have that demolished. We then liened the properties to try to get the money back. And the other thought with that, those monies too, because you never know when something like this is going to happen, and a dangerous building can occur overnight. But those funds could also be utilized to clean up large junkyard areas that if we can't get cooperation with that, and then lien the property with that also. So we do, when we spend our money on other properties that's not city-owned, we do lien the properties and try to get the amount, and it may take years, but it's still reimbursable at a certain percentage.
Right, but at what point in time do we start seeing that money coming back to us, you know? I mean, as you just said, it can take many years. So I know at one point we were having quite a few buildings that we were responsible for demolishing. I'm just trying to get at, you know, landlords being responsible for their buildings. And do we stay on top of that so that we don't have to get to this point and you know, take that cost on ourselves?
And when it becomes a dangerous to the public, that's when we have to go in and do that and try to recoup our money.
Is there something in place where, you know, a building is obviously needs to be revisited by somebody code enforcement person who says, you know, you've got to bring this up to code, and then constantly revisiting, sending letters, letting them know? Do we ride herd on that? Yeah,
it's a process, and like junkyards take 3 years. That's about how long to go through to get them cleaned up. I believe anything we do with dangerous buildings, that comes in front of this board. Is that correct?
It is. Councilor Hayes?
I guess I, for one, would like to take you up on having a session just to sit down and look at projects upcoming, some of which you can probably put out to the public, others that might require going to executive session. I think it would be very helpful for all of us to have a better idea of what is coming down the road and where developments might be, and again, it impacts our thinking as to our budget going to this next year.
We have, you know, Auburn has a lot going for it, and you know, the trucking industry from Bangor is moving down towards us. As you know, like Paul's Trucking is a small spot in here, and it's coming up from the Portland and Westbrook because of the cost.
I just think we need a session just so you could bring us up to date as to what we should be looking for.
Yeah, we're
just put that.
No, I'm going to dovetail off that. Okay, so you can hold some comment till you hear what I have to say on that one, because it's an absolute point. And I want to roll that in to the bigger conversation I'm listening to everything, I'm watching everything, and I think there's some good questions here, and congratulations on your department for doing a lot with a lot of different funding sources. It's extremely important. I come back to valuation decreasing. It's simple math, really. We have to see what our net valuation increase is annually, what our potential taxable revenues are, and apply it against what our potential spending budget is. Right now, we are increasing our municipal budget, that's CPI plus or minus a fraction of a percentage plus a school every single year. That's telling me that we are not having enough valuation come into the city to offset that increase in our taxable income. So I'm going to ask this question, and we're going to think about something a little bit differently. Rub your crystal ball, wave your magic wand, whatever the case is, and say, Jason or Mr. Mayor, whatever you want to call me. At this point, I don't care. We're off the record. How much valuation do we need every year for the next 5 years to exceed our anticipated CPI increases in our budget, so there's a zero impact on the taxpayer, if not a negative, or in this case, a positive impact on the taxpayer by a lowering of the mill rate? What do we need? And to keep up, obviously, with depreciation and so forth, and all the other negatives that you outlined here.
Yeah, you know, as you know, the mill rate's just a part of an equation, because when you have an evaluation done, it depends on what your house is valued at, and when you do revaluations, so it's all comes down what the budget is. You know,
let's assume the budget will increase 3% annually for the next 5 years.
We'd have to shoot for 5 years, but you know, we're looking at putting on $150 million.
Over 5 years or annually?
Yeah, no, yeah, over 5 years, you know, 30 million extra. But like I said, it's a plug number, and like I tell people, that you can't out-exercise a bad eating habit, and we can't outgrow large expenditures by 3 different county schools.
Understandable. We're not going there, though. Forget those other variables, the county, intergovernment agency, and I appreciate that, and I agree with your sentiment. Absolutely. What's the number? How much do we need every year for the next 5 years? And assuming a 3% annual increase in our budget.
I'd have to do the math separate from sitting here.
Let's have that, and if someone has that equation or number handy, just roughly. It's saying the mill rate stays the same, but we have a 3% increase in our spending combined annually. How much more valuation would we need?
Well, yeah, if you add $1 billion, you get $1 million, because a mill's a mill, right?
Right. So our current mill rate applied by, I figured out, I'm going to say that we need roughly $50 million in valuation annually added to Auburn's tax rolls. So we're going to go without, just for now. But this is an equation that we need to look at going forward, because what we need to find out is, how do we get a return on investment? Right now, our electrical fees pay for our electricians. Okay, that's a wash. Doesn't really give us a return, probably a slight loss. Okay, fair enough. I'm looking for a marketing budget, and I found something in here. Marketing support paid for TIF funds. What's that? $40,000 or $20,000? $26,000. $20,000. What is that line item for?
Well, last year they took money out of that for the sports tourism study, and so we didn't use it for marketing for that. So
but this upcoming fiscal year, we have $20,000 proposed for marketing support.
Yeah, and that's decreased quite a bit because of that funding that come out of there.
Okay, so it's going to be less than $20,000. So I'm going to get back. So let's all agree, just for round numbers here, we have a goal of $50 million in new valuation annually. Where money's spent, I'm not quite done yet. Are we going to find the money, A? B, where are we going to effectively spend the money in order to attract that? Because right now, I'm seeing nothing in this budget that's proactively geared towards bringing business in. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but I'm not saying there's a line item in this budget right now that's $50,000 for TV commercials in southern New England to say, move your business to Auburn, this is why. Or anything like that, okay? And that might be a bad example, but if we need $50 million and we're passively taking in permits and we have a passive approach to increasing valuation or a semi-active approach, I'm not seeing that we're going to go out there and get it. Okay, so I'm going to get off my soapbox just for a minute, but I'm going to jump back on here. I'll cede the mic to you for a moment for comment.
think I'm listening to Jack Kennedy say we're going to get on the moon here within 5 years.
And about 3.
Michael, go back to the slide where you talk about new value investment. So that's where we are, where we've been, right? So it's growing. It's projected at 34 million. How strongly do you feel about that?
Very strong. We have a lot of projects coming up, and I mean, I think I brought this up in executive session, looking at individual projects, saying, you know, if we keep saying no because 5 people don't like a project, we're never going to add value on. We have a lot of people that want to come here. We have several multi-million-dollar projects still pending as we speak, and some that are 10 times larger than that. You know, currently now we're looking at one project that can range from $30 to $70 million if we can get them continued interested in that area.
Right, so I think we're headed in the right direction, Mayor, members of the council.
Right direction and goal are 2 different things, but they lead into one another. You know, I'm a little blunt on this stuff because there's some absolute urgency. We spend all of our time focusing on cutting and questioning budget. We should, but we do have to proportion some of our time to increasing the valuation and the money in. We have a spending problem, but we also have a revenue problem. And I'm pretty firm or confident that nobody here wants to increase taxes. That's just kind of me shooting out in the dark. So back to the question. We're growing $30, $35 million annually. From an economic standpoint, we are poised, as you said, for amazing growth. Portland's tapped out, unfriendly business environment, high rates, high taxes are climbing higher than ours. North, Bangor, things are shifting down. Okay, Auburn's here. We know that. What do you need? And I'm not necessarily, I don't think we're all looking for the answer here. But back to Councilor Hayes' comment. We do need a workshop as soon as possible. I want a series of recommendations saying this, in the most idyllic world, is what we need. Changes, zonings, money for marketing, people for marketing. You know, we need to spend $100,000 and to do these actions in order to achieve a net increase off projected for 2019 of 35 to 50 million in valuation. That's going to give us a return on investment. Whatever those numbers are, okay? Because we need a series of tasks to execute here as a council. Because we can go through this budget ad nauseum, which we have and we will, and line item by line item, and recommend cuts. For example, I don't believe an electrician needs a brand new vehicle. I do believe we could repurpose probably that police cruiser that does make left-handed turns, paint her up a little bit, spend a little bit of money, and get that out to the electrician. That was Councilor Gary's recommendation. I'm just kind of parroting her thought on that. But that's just one idea. We could do that, but we need to start looking at this big picture. We need to get that 50 million mark, or whatever the mark is. So I think we're all willing here, out of meeting or out of workshop, to work with you to help understand that, okay, so we can have a good, effective workshop, but we need a series of goals, okay? And yes, it's a moonshot. It's a moonshot. I loved what President Kennedy did, and you know, and it's been copied many times over the years. There's a goal, it's lofty, but realistic. Go and backward plan from that goal and accomplish it. Right now, we're not backward planning from a goal. We're just going through the paces. And I want to challenge you, as well as every other department, to calculate return on investment, to calculate where we could spend money, because the loan example of Community Concepts is perfect. It's a loan, $100,000, Auburn businesses. Problem was, there were no Auburn businesses that needed it. It could be one of 2 things. Community Concepts money is too expensive. Could be. Or it could be there's no demand right now because people didn't A, know it existed, or B, they didn't need capital because they're not growing or expanding. So there's something to think about. That money could be utilized in a better spot, and maybe it's marketing Auburn, because I got to tell you, every other municipality in the state worth its salt is, and we're not. And I do not like to be second, third, or last. So those are my comments on that. But I'd love to work with the city manager. Maybe as soon as the budget season's over, we schedule this workshop, we give it the time it deserves, and we have a concrete set of plans that come out of that and action items for the council to address.
And Mr. Mayor, that was the plan 2 years ago when we defunded ABCOG. We were putting money into this department. If you look at regular salaries, they were $691 in 2017. I think they were less than that in 2016. We added people, and the reason we did that was because we wanted it more of a, not just, we wanted a department that was going to have that marketing, funding, you know, all that kind of stuff. to get things going as a full department for economic development, not just permitting and planning and
Yeah.
kind
And
of thing.
we're service-oriented, but with that being said, our math is showing that we're being effective, and these things don't happen overnight. You're going to be 3 to 5 years, maybe even longer, but we're, obviously, when you look at the stats, it's heading in the right direction. We've added value.
You are adding value. Counselor, excuse me, Counselor, you're not a counselor, you're a manager.
The manager?
No, it's all right. Just a couple of things. One is, it was LAEGC that was defunded, not AVCOG.
I'm sorry, yes. Thank
That's
you.
all right.
Get the two mixed up.
And secondly, I think the workshop's a great idea. We've actually talked about doing something with the council and all of you, and I think that makes sense.
Very good.
And if there's ever any sniffing of a $50 million investment, do not ever hesitate to call us. We will get you a van. I know where one keeps, someone keeps one at the airport. I'm sure they'd let us use it. We'll roll out the red carpet. There's nothing that we should not do to court a $50 million commercial investment into this city.
But you have to be careful too, as in the past, we've tiffed so much of it, that even the ones.
You
we've
get
been
them through the
doing
door.
lately,
I'm not,
we get-
I'm not going to get ahead of myself,
Yeah.
and we could say no, but I got to tell you what, we got a massive problem, and we have about 1.5% evaluation in TIF. But let's not get there. Let's get them through the door, get them talking. You get people engaged, and then you can start. But right now, we got to have more and more engagement. It's got to love them. Then we can get down to the points. Not to cut you off, Councilor Titus, but we need valuation.
We have a good reputation around Maine and New England. I mean, it's coming back to us. So you're hearing, you had dinner with me one day with some investors for that open a chain here that said that we're one of the best places they ever worked with.
Many times I've heard that from other people, including personal comments on you and your staff. Absolutely. That's why it's so exciting, frankly, to look at leveraging that reputation now for growth. Because you've got everything. Auburn is built for growth. We have public service, we have fire, we have police, we have infrastructure, we have signs, we have land, we have assets now, and we have reputation. And people are now willing to look at us. They're looking at reputation, they're looking at where else to go outside of southern Maine. It's about capturing now. Okay, we've got to go there and grab their attention and focus it like a laser and make sure they're sold on Auburn. And then we get down to the nitty gritty, and then it always works out into our favor. So this conversation can only happen because of the good work and the trajectory that your department has. So, any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. And please pass along to your staffs. Thank you very much for all the work they do.
Thank you
It
for your
truly is
time.
impressive, the numbers that we're seeing. We're going to take a 4-minute break here. It's 8:15. We're going to keep on going. We might make some adjustments to the schedule in order not to keep people here too late, but we'll get back with you on that one. So 4-minute break, please. And I'm live. Thank you very much. We're going to start back at the end. Thank you for allowing us a break. Mrs. Olivier,
Good evening,
Health and
councilors.
Human Services. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and councilors, Mr. Manager. I'm Holly Olivier, the Director of the Health and Social Services Department. I have what I believe will be a brief presentation concerning my budget for FY19. Slight increases are only being sought in two categories. The first is for medical, which pertains to prescriptions, and the second is for provisions for food. The increase for prescriptions is due to the fact that we do pay the main care rate for prescriptions, but we're seeing an increase in fees for certain medications. Regarding the increase in food, that's due to the fact that we've had some larger new Mainer families needing assistance recently, and when asylum seekers come to Maine, they need to have their fingerprints taken and their application for asylum prepared before they can have their SNAP food card started. So that's the reason for that. A decrease is actually being requested in burials, and that is due partly to the fact that on October 1st of 2017, an ordinance change was made to allow me to hold additional family members accountable as being financially responsible individuals to assist with burials, and that has offset the costs quite a bit. No increases are being sought for rent, electricity, heating oil, salaries, my operating supplies, or any other categories. And this equates to an overall increase of approximately $4,700 for FY19. And keep in mind that 70% of all my expenditures made by my office are reimbursed by the state. So that 70% would come back of whatever I grant for assistance.
Do we have any questions? I'm just going to open up. Any questions from the council? Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you can tell, she runs a very tight and frugal budget. This isn't exactly a question, it's a statement. In keeping with her frugalness, she's developed a pilot project in a lofty location. She's starting a gardening project with 3 beds. She's figuring out the logistics of getting the lumber. She just needs to get the logistics of having it delivered. Another feat is trying to get the soil she needs, good quality garden soil. So if there's any vendors out there that would like to donate enough soil for 3 beds, I think they're like 4 by 8 or 10 feet, she would greatly appreciate it. She's also looking for a watering source, which she thinks she's got that almost under control. And in exchange, she's going to get her clients that come in that have the time to go up where this garden is located and tend it. And this will hopefully aid her in providing fresh vegetables to her clients and help supplement her need to have to go to Good Shepherd or other food banks to buy this produce. And if this catches on, right now the proposal is to use unutilized space. So if this catches on and it's good this year, she may look at doing more in other locations. So I'm positive where the city is pro-gardening, where we got the new one on Newbury Street and the one over to the PAL, I figured I'd better get this plug in because growing season is quick upon us. So if anyone has any vendor has good potting soil in bags or however they could bring it, call her office and I'm sure she could greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Councilor Lasagna?
Oh, I appreciate this budget. It's so nice and straightforward. Are you seeing the kind of the makeup of some of your families changing?
It's about half new Mainers and half native Mainers, I would say. Again, it's leveled off somewhat due to the housing shortage, but stayed approximately about 50-50 from last year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Just two comments, please. On the electricity bills, I'm just kind of keying in on that, or medical supplies. Are you providing, is this a grant to the applicant, or is this a 0% repayable loan upon stability? For example, if I came to you and I can't pay my electricity bill, 3 months are going to turn it off, and you pay it for me at $300. Am I going to be obliged to pay you back?
It is not a loan. I do have a special trust account that I can access that doesn't come out of the general assistance fund for people that may not qualify based on their income, but otherwise if people are income eligible for this program, they are not expected to reimburse us. The state will reimburse at 70%, but they're not expected.
So the state will reimburse the city of Auburn 70% of the $6,000.
Yep.
Okay, so that leaves a balance that's non-reimbursable. Can we not ask for repayment of that 30% by the individual that is receiving the funds? The 30% that's not covered by the state?
Well, I can look into that. I've never considered that before. I've never considered this a loan. It's usually just part of the annual budget that comes out.
If we could look at, because there's helping hand and helping out.
Yep.
Okay? Yeah, I think it's fair.
Okay.
I know on a personal level, and I've been there before, and I honestly, the day 2 months after I started my company, I had no money. Auburn Water Department shut my water off. That same day I ran out of oil. The next day they turned the electricity off. I had no idea that anything like you existed, A. B, if I did, I would have been very, very happy to get some of that to get back on my feet and then repay it. So I think there might be just a different way of looking and delivering those services that could help or broaden help, but also, not be a negative towards the budget. Okay. So just something to think about, I think, on that one. And yes, I did eventually get it turned back on.
It's good to hear.
It was a rough couple months. So on that was 1 second. Burials. 6 average applicants annually, roughly. Obviously hard to predict.
Yeah.
Are these, is there folks usually without family or close family or proximity?
Right.
Well,
That's
I know
usually
there's
what
no
it is.
standard, but.
Right. That's usually what it is. It's without close proximity.
Could you do me a favor? Could you, if it's appropriate, let me know every time a situation like this arises?
Okay.
Because I do believe it's important for someone to be present at the interment.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's it for me. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Next on the list is what did I do with my master list? I think it's the terrible trio. Oh yeah, the terrible trio is here. And we're just gonna do Sabrina? I thought they're all three gonna come up. What's up to?
Sabrina. Want all three of you up here?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what they tell us. Yeah, okay. So thank you very much. I'll let you all introduce yourselves, because I get Jeremy and Jason confused every time I think about it. But Sabrina Best, if you could take lead. We're going to be talking about Ingersoll Turf Facility, NSB Arena, as well as recreation in general.
Yep. Jeremy Gatcomb, General Manager of the Ingersoll Turf Facility. And I handed out a description of this year's budget before the meeting. Hopefully everyone has a copy of it still. And I'll do a quick breakdown of everything. Staffing for Ingersoll consists of 2 full-time staff, myself, the general manager, and then 1 recreation specialist, which is shared 50-50 with the recreation department in time and funding as far as that position goes. Part-time staff, we have roughly 6 to 7 people who cover nights, weekends. They're essentially the boots on the ground, setting up rentals, switching fields, taking payments, dealing with any issues that take place the day of programs or rentals. And they're there pretty much any time outside of the standard work hours. Some of the goals and objectives that we are basing off for the FY19 budget, developing community opportunities. Obviously, Ingersoll is a city-owned facility, and we try to have a fair balance of rental opportunities and then opportunities for the citizens to sign up for programs, take part in open walks, family play times. So it's that juggling act of trying to have a proper balance of the two. We are looking to develop more drop-in opportunities for youth and adults, whether it be senior walking, whether it be youth open soccer, open lacrosse time in the spring, prepping for the season. And a few other options we're looking at is creating an annual family play day. We currently do one at the Pettingill Park Day in September. And we also offered a family fun time, I guess you can say, this past February with Big Time Bounce House. They set up all their inflatables and we let people come in to take part and check out the facility, which was great. We had roughly 250 people show up for that, so it was a really good turnout. And a couple other opportunities we're looking at is collaborating with some sponsors, similar to what Jason does for his sponsor escape. We're looking at possibly doing that with a soccer pickup, a family play time. So we're working with some of our current partners with offering those opportunities. The next goal that we have is increase our in-house programs that we offer. We're currently about a 90% rental-based facility. With adding that new position last year, the rec specialist, it allowed us to offer a few more programs this past year or this current fiscal year. One was the Youth Indoor Softball League, which allowed us to sign up over 140 girls from ages 7 to about 16, and they played a 12-week season, and we have girls from Saco, Portland, obviously a lot from Lewiston, Auburn, Augusta, Buckfield, so it's a wide range of participants for that program. So we're looking to continue to build on that league as well as possibly youth baseball and even some adult and senior opportunities as well. So the next page gives you a brief rundown of some of our performance measures. We're looking for this FY19 year, increasing our batting cage rentals by 7%, increasing some of the daytime offerings. That's typically our slower time. Kids are at work, kids are at school, adults are working. So we're trying to build up that 8 a.m. to 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon time, where it's typically kind of a quiet time where we do a lot of our planning and setting up for the evening rentals. Some internal programs, like I mentioned, continue to build on the youth softball leagues, as well as trying to offer some more birthday party packages for the facility. We have had about 55 birthday parties so far this fiscal year. I have 5 this Saturday alone in the building, so we're trying to offer more packages and not just a standard option every time someone comes in for a party. So, and some of the partnerships, we're trying to increase that by about 20% and still trying to work on a presenting sponsor for the facility. It would obviously keep the Ingersoll name, and we're just looking to have a presenting sponsor to go with that name of the facility. That bottom half is just some of the budget drivers, some of the lines that are increasing or decreasing. The biggest one is our program expense line, and that goes hand in hand with trying to offer more internal programs. That will cover cost of officials, equipment, t-shirts, trophies, plaques, you name it. And the good thing about that line is all costs for the programs are built into the individual or team registration fee. So it's covered by the cost, but we had to increase that if we want to continue to offer internal programs. So. Last page kind of gives you a breakdown of the overall budget, where some of the increases are, some of the decreases, and it's an overall 0.6 increase to the city budget for Ingersoll.
Sorry, just a little point of clarification. Yep. Facility capital expenditure, I mean, to get this facility, where's that line item? Is that inside of no. In other words, where's that cost?
Which cost?
The cost of Ingersoll itself. I mean, I know there was a CI, we bonded several years ago in order to convert it into the turf facility, but how is that being applied? Who's paying for that? Does that show up in your budget, or does it show up in the city bond payment?
It's in the city's budget.
City's budget?
Yeah.
Is there a possibility, is that number readily, handily, I mean, just, you know, available to see what our annual payment is to repay that bond?
I can get it for you. What we did at the time was we repurposed some money that we had originally bonded $750,000 to do the streetlights in like 2014, and we couldn't do the streetlights because CMP, there was issues with CMP allowing us to do it. So we took that money and it was reallocated for other things. So I'd have to go back and I think they reallocated $350,000 to Ingersoll, so I can figure that out for you. The principal amount on that bond We had already started paying on it, so it was a couple years old when we did Ingersoll. But the principal amount would be $35,000 a year, because we do all our bonds for 10 years.
Okay.
35,000
Oh,
plus
okay.
interest.
Plus interest. Okay, and the reason I ask is, when you're calculating an ROI, of course, you want to take in all your sunk costs or capitalized expenses, the building being one of them. And I know it's thank you very much for that explanation. It's just something to keep in mind as you're generating revenue and doing programming, what is the net cost, for the city, and what do we get for it? And I don't think anyone could argue that we get a lot of value. I've been to a lot of events at your facility and our facility, and it's beautiful. Thank you very much for that. Are there any specific questions from the council on this, on Ingersoll? Councilor Titus.
I just wanted to bring up again, I'm looking at my budget book per se, and it doesn't match what we're seeing here, so I just want to, because obviously we're going to be voting on a combined budget, right? So I would assume what's in this book is what we're going to be voting on. So when I look at the expense line, I don't see a complete total expenditure. I see the 105,624 from last year on salaries, but I don't see it added for the proposed budget. Am I missing something?
Your regular salaries right here. That is odd. It's here. It's in the book.
Okay, so maybe,
it's not online though.
but it's not in the online version that we were given the first night. Okay.
Doesn't seem that way.
What you have here, Jeremy, and is the program budget information, right, on administration, program facilities. I think Councilor Titus is talking about how that compares in terms of what was presented to Jill on the proposed budget.
So which line is?
We can drill down on that and come back to you.
Well, you have a
on
different
that.
page than I do.
I don't think the numbers are different, but I think.
I don't think it's different.
Ingersoll turf.
Jill, do you have any thoughts on that?
But I'm just missing a lot of these.
He's just splitting it out.
Right.
By the
Three different categories.
By admin, programming,
the-
and facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can give you a breakdown on what lines fall in each of those three categories, if that helps. So under the administration section, it is a combination of the regular salaries, office supplies, advertising, mileage reimbursement, due subscriptions, training, development, and postage. Under the program line, should be part-time staff and the program expenses. And then under my facility should be all the utilities, repairs, maintenance, safety supplies, custodial supplies, PS General, diesel fuel, and insurance for the facility.
He just doesn't have it totaled.
Okay. Now, and I can see where Councilor Titus is missing a couple, but it's here in the hard copy version.
Yes.
And it all adds up.
But the electronic version is different than the hard copy
Right.
version? Why would that be?
I'm not sure. It's just blanked out. It's like there's zero in there. Maybe we should show this.
We'll tie
You can tie it in later. But I mean, the book itself, the hard version, marries up with everything you're saying to an end positive profit of 2335 projected for next year.
How it's presented, Jeremy.
That's with the CIP of the roof project being in there. We've talked about some ways of cutting some savings for this year, and one was taking out that CIP project. If we did, then it would be a profit of $32,335.
Which probably covers the more than enough for the portion of the bond to update the facility. Okay. Yeah, we have to correct that. Is there any other questions? Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not so much a question for this budget, since we're closer to the end of the fiscal year. Starting with the budget for July 1st and moving forward, since we already have their budget as a separate line item, we're reporting on, their expenditures on a month and year-to-date type of thing, could we have the bonding debt included so that we know what their actual spending and bills and all the costs are, so that we know how self-sufficient they are? Because one of the biggest things we hear with the EMS is we don't take in consideration everything that deals with the EMS transport, the paying of salaries, this, that, and everything. So I think for a clearer picture to know for a fact we're either making money or losing money, and how well you're doing your job. I mean, don't take me wrong, you're doing an excellent job, but, I mean, for future, then that will be a gauging point. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Zani, did you have something?
No,
No?
I'm all set, thank you.
Councilor Fournier, question?
One quick question, well, two maybe. Capital expenditures, the one that you have lined on the, it went from nothing last year to 30,000. So again, explain that to me.
So that is the roof project for all exterior doors on the buildings, the CIP project. It would be installing basically 9 roof awning systems over the doors right now to help with snow falling down,
so it doesn't
water
fall.
coming down on heavy rain days, so.
Yeah, it's pretty dangerous there. The other thing that I had is that nowhere on this, do I see that it's a 12-year program? Is this a 12-month program? Is this a 12-month program?
We're open year-round.
Year-round.
This summertime is obviously a slower time, people are
got
outside,
it.
and with no AC unit in the building, it is kind of hard to get people in there, but we are open
Yep.
all year round, so.
And I've gone for my tour, I was very impressed, and I really thank you for getting more clients to come on board, especially the girls softball teams and stuff. I wish my daughter would have had that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Walker?
Thank you. I appreciate all your work you put in this budget, but I was hoping you were going to come in with some kind of a cost for an AC unit, first of all. Second, what would that do for us in that building for programming? I know you say you do some inside, but you and I know that it's not healthy to be in that building in the summertime.
Absolutely.
So you're
Absolutely.
really not, you might as well close the doors and go to work somewhere else for 3 months when it's summertime. So I want to know what it will take to put in an air conditioner in that unit, to at least bring it down to something that you and I can live in and play sports in, because it's crazy to have that building, and it's worth its weight in gold. And I think we all know that and understand that, but to not be able to operate in the summertime is just beyond my mind. We've been at it now for 3 years, 4 years, so we need that cost, and I don't think it's that hard to get someone to come and give us a number. And then your job would be to figure out, I guess, what can we bring in there in the summertime to offset that cost?
Did anybody want to address that? I know it was on, then off. I know there's some work going on.
Yeah, I'll address it. I mean, it's a good question, Council Walker, and it's one that Jeremy has raised with the Assistant City Manager and myself. I think one of the questions we have is there's going to be a strategic planning process. There's been some discussion about should we have a new turf facility because of how successful this one has been. I think that's part of the question. Do we invest more money in this building, or do we look at doing something new is part of the issue. Obviously, what the council would like to do and the direction you'd like to give us is very important to that question.
I think the direction, I think from Councilor Walker's standpoint, I think the numbers speak for itself. Anybody object to what I'm about to say is that it might be, if there's an ROI associated with a capital expenditure on an air conditioning for that building, it does make sense looking forward. If we did ever have to or want to get a larger building, you know that overall, and I'm assuming here, overall demand decreases, air conditioned or not, in the summer months. So it might make strategic sense to have, a lower cost air conditioner unit in a smaller of the facilities, let's say, I guess hypothetical, versus in a larger facility anyways. So it might be money well spent. And again, if you can increase your operations and what happens in revenue, I think, as a council, I think we'd like to look at that in this budget. Am I wrong? Anybody object? No? Okay. I will say also, Casco Bay Sports, run adult activities. They've asked me multiple times about talking. They'd like to run activities and pay rentals. So that's all I'm going to say. Might be interesting to have someone else run it in the summer, staff, whatnot. So leave that there. Just an idea. They left their card on my desk. So if no other questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're going to move on. Ms. Best?
All right. Council and Mayor, I'm going to start out with the CIP request. for the Recreation Department. The first request was for a 24-passenger bus. Currently, right now, we have a 12-passenger van that includes the driver. So technically, 11 participants can go on any trip. One of our popular senior programs are trips. And we probably within the last 6 months or so have seen an increase to the need that we need to borrow the police van. And we have 2 vans going on these trips. There's a lot of other smaller trips that we could take with our summer camp kids or the vacation camp. So there's the need for a bigger vehicle to transport more individuals. The other issue with the van is that it's pretty unsafe for some. It's hard for me to get in and out, let alone asking some of these senior participants that are having a hard time safely getting in and out of the vehicle. And when we go on trips, they sometimes have to get in and out multiple times. It limits us on how the accessibility with anyone that has any handicap issues as well. So the original request was for $35,000. We've already explored an alternative option. We have been approached by the school department to purchase one of their older school buses. This would be a 44-passenger bus that has a wheelchair lift with 2 wheelchair spots in it. It currently does not have a sticker, so we got it inspected, and in total with getting it street ready and then the transition from a school bus to a passenger bus would decrease this line item by $20,000. So I would adjust that and say that we're requesting $15,000 for the passenger bus. There's $12,000 being requested for tot lot upgrades. Not sure how many of you have been out to the tot lot, but it's a fun little park out on Route 4 towards the Turner line. There's a small house and then a big field with some playground. There's a pond with a retaining wall, and the retaining wall is starting to deteriorate and causing kind of a safety issue out there. This is one item that I think overall the tot lot location in general needs to have a long-term plan developed. But this retaining wall is definitely something that needs to be addressed. We do rent this place out. It gets booked almost every weekend throughout the summertime. So it is definitely still a location in the city that gets utilized. Next is we've requested $50,000 for security cameras. This would be for indoor and outdoor cameras for the Hasty Community Center, the Senior Center, and Ingersoll. The big thing for us is safety. In the summertime, we have over 100 summer kid campers. I like to say controlled chaos, but they're kids, and they are going from inside the building, outside the building. There's a lot of safety issues sometimes with being able to account for all of them, making sure there's enough eyes on them. We also have had some issues where in our parking lot, some unfortunate situations have occurred, and without being able to go back and kind of recount the events, it's very hard for us to identify what actually happened, who to hold accountable for. The next slide.
Ms. Best, did you say 50,000?
50, yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
One other comment on that. Have we checked on the potential for upgrading specific LED lights with their security camera upgrades in order to potentially save money on the housing?
That was not an item that Derek and I had talked about, but it's something that I could definitely bring up and look into if that has any cost savings for it.
If you could, please. I know that is definitely an add-on to streetlights. We're going to be putting streetlights down there, at least for some, and there could be some ways to save some money there. Thank you.
Yep. So the next item is $15,000 for a sound system in Festival Plaza. Currently, we have a portable sound system that we utilize most often in the Senior Center for their meetings and stuff. And whenever we do an event in Festival Plaza, that equipment has to be transported down, then set up, and then take it down afterwards and then brought back. So being able to put a permanent sound system down in Festival Plaza will not only help decrease the staff time, it will make us be more efficient when we offer events, but it will also help with these smaller events to be able to provide, even if it's just background music. So say the holiday parade, instead of contracting out a DJ to come in, it's something we can pull up a playlist and just plug an iPod in and then just let it play over the speaker. And it's something we can offer throughout the rest of the holiday season rather than just having it that one time. We do have big events down there where we have concerts and bands come in, so being able for them to just kind of tap into our already existing system will also help eliminate some of the additional costs that we've incurred. The Senior Center Phase 2 is for $45,000, and this is for the kitchen. Currently, any of the meals that are being offered there right now have transitioned to being catered out. There is a kitchen space, but there is nothing really outside of a sink, and just a few prep stations available. Being able to at least put in the footprint for a kitchen will at least allow for us to eliminate the cost of catering and be able to prep the meals ourselves, and then it opens the door for rentals that could potentially go in there that are in the need of a kitchen. So whether it's prepping or during jamming and canning season, that adds another component to being able to rent out that space. And then there's $15,000 for Union Street / the Chestnut upgrades. This Phase 1, I would call it, it really is going to go towards upgrading the playing area. So there's a field out there. In the wintertime, that's where it gets flooded for an ice rink and it gets plowed. And a lot of times when that happens, it digs up the grass and the dirt. And this field has kind of not been shown a ton of TLC, so it's turned into it's a parking lot, a dirt parking lot, honestly. It's created a lot of unsafe situations for our football program this past fall with a lot of injuries. We actually decided to not have our lacrosse program practice and play games there. We had to find a new location because of the current condition. So the field would then need to be addressed, and then there's also some football uprights that are in need of replacement. Currently, right now, there is a soccer program that is being kind of held off to the side, and there is a system of football uprights that you can have a soccer goal underneath, so it is something that we can replace and we can find a dual purpose for it, and it will be able to utilize it for not just football program, but for a soccer program as well. Then there was 3 other items that were originally placed on the CIP request that have been transitioned into the recreation operating budget. The first one is for football equipment. So the rec department runs the youth football program, which is from 1st grade all the way to 8th grade in our community. With that, we supply all of the equipment for these individuals because they are pretty costly if they have to go and purchase them themselves. There is it's required that every 3 years the football helmets are replaced. This is due to a lot of the concussion testing and safety issues and concerns. So what we do is, every 3 years we purchase brand new helmets. They get mailed out after each year, and they get kind of resurfaced, retouched upon, and then the safe ones are sent back and they get a little sticker on them. The initial cost for 100 helmets is $12,000, but we're only putting in $6,000, and the rest of that will be matched by the football. Every year they do fundraising in anticipation for this cost, which is able to then, help match what we're asking for the additional funds. The other item is $5,000 for tables and chairs replacement. The amount of times I've had to track down tables and chairs and count them is a bit excessive. The fact that we only have 20 to 22 tables, and then roughly 150 to 200 chairs that's utilized for all of our program, not just within Hasty, but within Ingersoll, and then when Norway Savings Bank Ice Arena also has, you know, big events, they utilize our tables and chairs. The biggest issue and concern is that I am constantly asking staff to transport them, to break them down, to set them back up. They spend so much time on dealing with these tables and chairs and finding them and relocating them that it's becoming inefficient. So we've lost a ton of inventory with tables and chairs over the last few years due to them breaking, lost, being stolen, whatever it is. So we need to replace those, and then we also need to increase it because the demand for tables and chairs have increased as well. And then the last item is $5,000 for city decorations. This was an item that over the last 2.5 years I've realized that we don't do much for that when you're driving through town. What makes people smile and feel good? This is a beautification item. Going through the gateways, I don't know how many times I've heard about the gateways into Auburn are just not appealing or give you that good feeling of coming into this community. So this was an item that I wanted to put in there because I think it's needed. And it's not specific to a holiday, but more so just welcome to Auburn banner on those stoop poles or something like that.
Could you, just a pause, just one quick or a couple quick comments if anybody has anything too on that. First of all, overall, I'm gonna definitely give you a huge kudos for grasping return on investment. And the majority of your line items, you applied it 100%, and you grasped the true definition of the vast majority of those. Now, when you're successful early on, you get punished. Because next year, we're going to say, so, you got tables and chairs at $5,000. How many hours did that save you? How many more bookings were you able to do? How much more revenue did you bring in to offset that $5,000? So that's going to happen, just giving you a heads up. Track some of that stuff, because I'm going to ask, I know others will as well. So, but overall, no, thank you very much. What makes sense here is sound system at Festival Plaza pops up at $15,000. You know, okay, we can grasp that. There's something that we can quantify as a savings associated with that capital investment. I will say, under city decorations, a couple things pop up. Leroy, Councilor Walker, isn't New Auburn, United New Auburn provide the Christmas decorations for the New Auburn area in the winter? Am I wrong on that?
All the decorations around Woolley's Diner is done by the United New Auburn.
United New Auburn?
Yeah, the Public Works Service helps us with the Christmas tree in the New Auburn park down there. Other than that, there isn't really too awful much. There's a few things that the Public Service puts up in the poles. Over the years, a lot of things have needed to be replaced, and I'm going to guess this is going to help in some of it if it isn't all put into the gateways coming into the city.
Go back to that. Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to get a little grasp on it, on the history. But also, to me, your idea, valid, good. I applaud it too. The CDBG, Councilor Lasagna, on the Community Block Challenge Grant of $44,000, if memory serves me correctly, that we cannot give away. This might be a very apt application for that next year if it hasn't been already done. So.
I think that's a good idea. You just have to make sure that it meets the requirements of the CDBG funding, and some of it can be kind of strict.
The right neighborhood, yeah.
Right. Because I mean, there's different, obviously, things, but unless you've done that already, or you have any intel on this one?
It would need to, the requirements is that it would need to be a community group that are applying for it, and it needs to be within a target area as well. So there are some of those, but it has been talked about not just with this item, but a few others that have been come up in my budgets.
Okay. No, great. Well, thank you very much. Okay. Is there any other questions on CIP or operating? Councilor Gary, start off with you. Questions? No comments?
Did you say no question, no
questions, no comments, no commentary? We're trying to get through this on questions.
Right, but it's dealing with the tables and chairs. We were able to, somebody offered direct department chairs, I guess, for the senior center. at a very low rate. They were used chairs, but they were by far better chairs than what we were using. And they were bought with this stipulation. They weren't supposed to leave the senior center, but on occasion, somehow or another, different departments or whomever goes in there and those chairs get raided out of there. So as much, I mean, I really, really want the chairs, especially for the senior center and Hasty, but we got to have a guarantee if chairs are bought purposely for the senior center, that they stay in the senior center. I don't know if we need to color code them so that people, all the departments that we meaning the city loans chairs to, knows these colored chairs are out of bounds, same as the tables. I mean, departments, I know in the past there was a lending policy, but if you have a function going on in Hasty and you get ready to go in there to set up and your tables are gone, your chairs are gone, and then their staff is going scavenger hunt. That's not right to the rec department. It's not fair to the seniors that are planning.
So you're in support of the additional chairs?
I am.
Okay.
And the tables, as long as we can figure a way that they can be color coded to be segregated or separated from anything else that's loaned out. And if we get new chairs.
If they can't do that, then you're not in favor of the chairs?
I want the chairs, but I don't want to have a policy where we're going to loan them out to every agency, organization within the city.
Ms. Best, with the new chairs, will they be set aside and dedicated to rec department usage?
Staff has already explored ways to be able to identify the difference between the two, and making sure that the old inventory, that's the inventory that is loaned out, so that way we are not losing or not getting back the newer stuff.
And the newer ones aren't going to be busted, destroyed, and wrecked, so that we don't have anything good and long-lasting.
Our plan is to keep them in good working condition so they last us a long time.
Thank you.
Councilor Walker?
I'd like to start at the top. I got a few questions. The passenger bus that you're saying the school department is willing to make a deal with you, did you say you had it inspected?
Yes.
So next is a plan of having it painted and everything? Is that where we're headed?
Yeah, so it would need to be painted, and then all the bells and whistles of what makes it a school bus would have to be removed as well. So it was the estimate that I got was $8,000 to get it street legal and get a sticker, and then it would cost another $3,000 to $4,000 just to get all the other stuff, get it painted and make it a passenger bus, not a school bus.
Two other questions. Do you know what year it is and how many miles are we looking at?
I do, but I do not have it right here, but I could pull it up in an email and send it to you if you'd like.
Okay, tot lot. You got $12,000 for the pond, and you got wall and ditch, and did someone give you that estimate, or is that something that somebody pulled from somewhere?
That was an open conversation. I didn't go to a contractor to get an actual hard number. There's more than just the retaining wall. There are the ditches, and then there's also some, I don't know if something got buried at one point in time, but it's very unstable with, it looks like old logs that just got filled in with stuff on top of it.
Well, you have some piping system under there that used to drain the water. There was valves that drained the water because you had trout, whatever they're called, trout troughs below that, and they used to fill. You could fill. There used to be 3 after that.
Okay.
They're all filled in except one, and that's almost filled in today.
Okay.
I have problems with that 12. I don't think that 12 is going to get you there, to tell you the truth. That whole wall is pretty well gone, and that was dammed back for reasons, and I don't know if you need that much water dammed back, but I really think you may run into trouble with that number, so I think you need to search that a little further. Security cameras at Pettingill Park, I can feel for you in a way, but $50,000 is way more money than we need to spend at Pettingill Park. I worked there for over 35 years, and I'd like to have a couple cameras too, but at $50,000, it's just too much money. Sound system for the Festival Plaza, I'm hoping that if we're going to let other people use it, that we plan on coming up with some kind of a way of cost for that facility, because that is a facility that I think people would be willing to pay a little bit of something to you to use that down there. It is a city-owned park, and it's probably one of the best parks that we have local downtown. So having a little cost to help you buy these things or pay for them as time goes on could help us, because you're going to come into repairs as it gets older and worn. The senior center, $45,000. I think it sounds like a lot of money, but I think you'll use every penny of it in that kitchen, and I'm hoping that you're really going to research spending that 45 in it to make sure that you've opened up all the space that you can really open up there. And I know you're thinking about a system that's going to go over stoves and cooking facilities. Don't get hooked into just one place. There's many. You can find these, go online. You can buy secondhand ones as good as brand new and have them put in for 1/4 of the amount of money. I did that in the past because the city of Auburn says you can't use this system, put in a new one. I went online and got it for 1/4 of what they wanted across the river. So, Union Street and Chestnut Street, $15,000. We could probably give you 30 and you'd spend every penny of it, because that field that she's talking about is in really, really bad shape. It hasn't had anything done to it in 10, 15 years. I don't know if you're planning on reaching out to a sports company, but I'm hoping that you saw a price from somebody, because 15 is not very much money. It doesn't go very far, but it's a good start for you, I guess, at that point. Football equipment, I know is, in years that I worked there, we had to have them inspected every year. I don't think back then we had to buy new ones every 3 years, but that may be the new rule, I don't know.
Yeah, that's been updated.
That, I can't comment on. It's a lot of money, that's for sure, but
Yes.
they gotta be safe when they're out there playing. Your tables and chairs, one thing I was hoping that the Norway Arena was gonna come up with something in their budget to pay for their own tables, because they need tables up there often. And for you to truck your tables up there and back, and you gotta bring them up an elevator in most cases, you gotta bring them down, you gotta rack them up, throw them on a truck, and that's how they get damaged. If you've ever moved, I call them Teflon tables, and you slide it on an edge of a truck, you're always gonna damage them. And in most cases, you're gonna have young people moving these things that don't understand. They gotta last you forever, not just for a month or a year, and they get damaged really bad. Then you got the clowns that love to put their, you know what, on the table instead of the chair that sits against it. And you go to Norway Arena, they are on the tables all the time up there. So let them buy it in their own budget, and I agree with Belinda. We do not lend tables out to anybody except within our own city. If people want them, go rent them at Easy Rental somewhere. Sorry, we can't help you. That way they'll last you twice as long. Decorations, if I had my way, you'd have 10,000 there, not 5. But I know budget this year is really tight, so good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, we're going to move right along, because I know Ms. Bess has.
Excuse me. Just quickly, when you talk about return on investment, one question that I had is Tot Lot, if that gets rented out, and how much does it cost?
We typically charge $100 for the day. There's no time limit.
Yes, not after dark.
Right, yes.
So if you're going to spend $12,000 on it, how long would it take to?
Well, it's only rented in the summertime, so it would take quite a few years before you ever saw.
So I'm just curious about, is it worth even investing in?
And I think that was when I made the comment of trying to develop a long-term vision and plan for this place, because it's not just the retaining wall that's needing, there's that little house that you go inside for the functions, that needs a lot of attention and addressed as well. Then there's some playground equipment too that needs to be looked at. So I think developing a bigger plan for that location is definitely needed. And that would, I'll be honest, I think that would be one item that I would be okay with putting off a year to develop that plan and get more of a vision and direction on that.
I think that's a good idea. Now, if you have a school bus, do you need a special license to be able to drive it?
Yes, so you would need a Class B with a P endorsement. And you know, there's other additional costs because then you'll need diesel fuel. It will need to be plugged in. So there are some costs that do come in with that. But having a 44 passenger bus allows us to do a lot of more options, not just with senior trips, but with our other summer camp, vacation camp, family events, going to the Red Claws or something like that. It opens the door for a lot of that stuff.
And finally, last one, football equipment, what ages?
So helmets are issued out from 1st grade to 8th grade.
So they're still playing contact football in 1st grade?
It's yes and no. We try to teach them more of the fundamentals and not so much of the actual contact. They get into real intense contact in the 3rd and 4th grade.
But they don't feel like football players if they don't have that helmet.
They need the helmet.
I mean, I think we don't need to get into this, but frankly, best practice is not to have any contact until they're 12.
Yes, and that's what our focus, our primary focus is to teach them the flag football, get them introduced to it, do the fundamentals first, learning spacing with little kids. We all know they just want to group together. But at the 3rd and 4th grade level with the league that we play in, that's when they start with contact. But there are a lot of rules in place to help make it so it's less of an impact until they obviously progress and have more control of their body. If they can ever control
And
their body.
they still fall down and bump their head.
Councilor,
I have a few questions to follow up on the question about football. Is that a PAL-sponsored event?
The football program? No.
Okay. I know when my kids were in school, there was, flag football is what they played. Do you still do that?
Yes, so we still offer a flag football
Because
option.
I, too, am very concerned about contact because that we don't even allow that in school.
Yeah.
Looking at Councilor Walker is a hard act to follow because he really knows that area. That's his stuff. The passenger bus, I would suggest, as he had said, to get the odometer reading and the year and make of the bus.
Yep.
I much prefer seeing a lower price for that since you already have a bus, right? You already have
We have a van.
a van, not bus, but a van.
Yep.
Okay. Tot lot, I would suggest that you get estimates, professional estimates. Security camera, I would suggest, again, you get some professional estimates as to the cost, but I have a concern about why you need the camera. Has anything serious happened there?
So we did
People
get in
abuse
touch
this
with
for years.
Protection One, so all of these numbers are based off of the quote that they provided, and these are for indoor and outdoor. We, since I've come on board, there's very often times that I am the only one left in the building to lock up by myself. And there have been times where people come and they hide in the facility, and they wait till you leave, and typically, thankfully, nothing has happened, but there are times we have part-time staff that are locking up and they are a young female that are alone by themselves. That is a safety issue for me. And so being able to have that backup system and it's connected into a system so we can pull it up online or at a different location to always check in on things. We have had some, illegal activity, I guess you could say, it happened within our parking lot. And there's been an issue or time where there's been a fight that has happened within the facility, like an adult basketball game, and not being able to go back and watch who did what and said what and antagonize it, it puts us in a tough situation to figure out what really happened. And then we go back to the he said, she said stuff.
For that reason, I think, the idea, some people were concerned about, putting cameras on on the new lights, but, you know, in this day and society, if you have outside lights, yeah, by all means, put cameras on there, because you have to bear more than the burden of proof. But what happens when it's inside, you know, I mean, then that's a different set of equipment.
Yeah.
The students, the children that you have, you said that they come in and out, you know. Don't you have staff watches them, that watch them and bring them in at a certain time to go to the bathroom, they all go together, that kind of thing? That would reduce your problem with losing kids inside, yeah. And Union and Chestnut and the Senior Center Phase 2, that really needs to have some estimates done, professional estimates. The football equipment, we already covered that. So I think that when you present anything where you need like an estimate of numbers, there needs to be something substantiating that as backup paperwork, where you get professional estimates from a couple of people, a couple of businesses, and then, you know, you'll have something to go with. So that would be something that would help us greatly too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Councilor Hayes?
Just a quick one. We talked about Tot Lot being rented out, but you use it during the week, during the summer for programs?
So this past year, we held our 7th and 8th grade middle school summer camp out there. It was our home base. It gave them kind of their own space. They're a little bit older. We could eliminate some of the issues we were having with an 8th grader and a 3rd grader at the same location. It also gave them more freedom because they could go out and they could venture into the woods, the nature, and those kinds of things. This year, from some of the comments that we got back, that it was just so far away from the other camps, it really caused more of an issue for some of the families with drop off and pick up and stuff. So we will be looking to bus the kids out there in smaller groups, but it won't be a home base like it was last year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'm looking at the time, I'm looking at the remaining slides in your deck, and I'm looking at hockey, ice skating rinks and such, Jason's presentation. But taking all that into consideration, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to postpone the rest of your presentation. Okay. And Norway Savings Bank's presentation, and I give you my sincerest apologies, but I do think it's important at this point because humans usually fade right around now, and you all deserve to have this gone through to standard and not necessarily to time. We have an open spot on our agenda that's been built in for just this eventuality, and that is Tuesday, May 29th at 5:30. You will be first, and then you'll be able to get out. So I do want to apologize for this, but I do think it's the best course of action. Have any objections from the council on that one? No?
I've got 7 a.m. meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go to the gym at 5. No, I'm joking. I wouldn't do that. But are you three okay with that? Again, I apologize. I mean, obviously, you know, we hate to have this, but we want to do this as standard and not to time. Fair enough?
Good.
Okay. You're off the hot seat. Thank you. Thank you very much. With that said, folks, all of you in the audience and at home, thank you for sticking with us. It's been very informative. We appreciate it. Have a great night.